Hasan from the Hasan Abi podcast or broadcast, and Ethan from the H3 podcast used to be friends. They used to have a podcast together called Leftovers. They kind of broke up the podcast after the October 7 attacks last year, and since then, at least Ethan has been taking a couple of pot shots at Hasan and his community, calling them anti Semitic. He's been doing these pot shots online, on Instagram, I believe, and he has just recently, on their latest podcast, decided to address the controversy and address Hasan and his community. We're going to watch it through, give a little bit of commentary, see where he's right, see where he's wrong, and just, fuck around. And let's see what happens.
And just, this is it, okay? So let's turn off chat, because I don't, you know what I mean? Whatever you guys have to say at this moment, I don't know. I don't want it to be toxic. That's it. That's why I'm turning it off. All right.
I mean, already we see here, it's a weird situation. He's turning off his chats, which is weird. I mean, it's your community. Why would you turn off your chats? Why would you not care what they think? But okay, everyone has ways to cope, I guess. And he's turning off his chat. He just wants to focus on what he's going to say. Fair enough. Fair enough.
As I said, I'm going to be quick and factual. There's no fluff. I'm going to get through as fast as I can. This is not something you're interested in. Obviously, I understand. I would suggest you refer to timestamps or Catch Our Friday show if you don't want to watch this. Totally understand. Before I begin, I would like to address a couple of points that I know will be brought up. One, that I hear a lot. Why don't you talk to Hasan about this privately? I did text him a couple weeks ago after I saw the clip of him saying that he had no problem with Hezbollah. I texted him that I thought it was pretty disappointing and disturbing the way that he was, I'm on no sleep, sorry. What's the word? He was hyping up Hezbollah. And granted, when I texted him that, I said, you don't have to respond to me. I totally understand because it's unsolicited, criticism. I get it. But I was kind of hoping to open the door to a more personal conversation. He did not reply.
I mean, if you were opening the door to a more personal conversation, should have probably asked him for a better conversation. As for Hasan supporting Hezbollah or not having problem with Hezbollah, I think, those political issues are a bit more complicated than just Hezbollah bad and Hamas bad, but we'll get into that the further we go into this video, I'm sure.
Which I took as basically just like we're on the opposite sides of this issue and talking isn't going to really help, which I get, and I agree. That's probably where we're at, unfortunately. But I did try, and again, not to blame him because I said you don't have to respond, just so you know. I felt I needed to tell you this, so like it's not like that's what happened, okay? And in fact, we haven't spoken in a few months. We've spoken very little since the show ended. Obviously, this is what I don't like. I've been taking these stupid little pot shots at him, Instagram stories and stuff. Something happened over the past few days that really fucking set me off and made me get kind of just like determined to finally just do this once and for all.
And to be fair, Hasan has not taken any pot shots at Ethan, as far as I know. He's been mostly just kind of ignoring him. And whenever he does address Ethan, it's very tame, very quick. He pretty much just says that Ethan is not his enemy and just kind of wishes him well. Now, some people can view that as passive aggressive. Some people can just view that as him not controlling his community. But nonetheless, he really hasn't been doing or saying anything about Ethan for the most part since the podcast finished.
So obviously things have got more strained between us as time's gone by, and after some recent events, which I'll get into, I find it impossible not to say anything. I don't want people to need to speculate about our relationship, about our opinions about each other. I just want to address it now openly, bluntly. As a person, as a friend, I respect Hasan. I don't think you need to choose between us. It's not like that. In fact, it's not personal at all. I am seeing a concerning rise in anti-Semitism and a normalization of it in a way.
Notice he said it's not personal at all. Now, I've obviously seen this video before recording this, but I think it gets personal real quick.
That I don't think Hasan is anti-Semitic, but I do think that stuff he does contribute to it.
He doesn't personally think Hasan is anti-Semitic, which I think is an important thing to point out. He doesn't personally think Hasan is anti-Semitic. Now let's see if he holds true to that thought throughout this whole conversation.
I know that's a big claim. However, I hope that you will watch this through. I believe it's well supported, and I feel that it will be persuasive if you listen to what I'm saying. So please at least give me the due. Give me your ears for a moment to hear me out. Feel free to disagree with me all you want, but yeah. But again, like it's not. I mean, Hasan can do better. He can conduct himself better, in my opinion. It's possible that we could be friends again down the line, or not that we stop being friends, but we could be friendly again, or more on talking terms. I don't know, down the line. But at the moment, he is like the lead. He's kind of like the most prominent voice on this issue. So it's not personal. It's literally just addressing where this is all coming from. Another comment that I read all the time that I want to address up front, and it's kind of the heart of all the problems that I'm having here, is that I hear all the time, in fact, this was the top comment on a thread on our subreddit, is that with all the terrible things happening in Gaza, I can't bring myself to care about anti-Semitism. which I understand the sentiment, right? There are terrible things happening in Gaza. However, these are the people who are nonstop trying to convince everybody that Zionism is not Judaism and convince them.
Yeah, that's kind of a shitty thing to say. As bad as the things happening in Gaza are, that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about other bigotry. So he's right about that, obviously. And I don't think Hasan has ever said that you shouldn't care about anti-Semitism. In fact, here Ethan is pointing out a subreddit, not Hasan specifically. Now, mind you, he's also addressing Hasan's community, but nonetheless, I just feel like it's important to point out that just because what's going on around the world is tragic does not mean, shouldn't mean, that we should not care about some of the other problems as well.
Themselves that we don't hate Jews, we just hate Zionists. So when I complain about anti-Semitism, why is it that it always goes back to Israel? It seems that they're the ones that are confused about Zionism and Judaism. Because again, if I'm complaining about anti-Semitism, what does that have to do with Gaza, or what does that have to do with Gaza?
Now, here's the weird thing that he does throughout this conversation. Notice he said that when he complains about anti-Semitism, the people that come back at him always bring up Zionism, always bring up what Israel is doing against Gaza, and always brings up the war that Israel is in currently. So in other words, to give an example, if Ethan says, hey guys, anti-Semitism is bad, someone always brings up, well, look at what Gaza is doing, or look at what Israel is doing in Gaza. And his point is, if you guys care so much about anti-Semitism, but you hate Zionism, and you can distinguish between the two, right? You can distinguish between being an anti-Zionist, but also not being an anti-Semite. How come whenever someone brings up arguments against anti-Semitism or complaints of anti-Semitism, you always bring it back to Zionism? You always bring it back to the cruelties that Israel is doing. Why is Israel? How about Israel? What about Israel? Why is that the answer to every single time someone brings up, or in this case, Ethan brings up anti-Semitism? And we'll get to the answer in a bit.
You know what I mean? Apparently, according to them, nothing, if they're not related. This is a confusion that is at the root of the problem I'm having of contributing and rising anti-Semitism that I'm seeing, is this usage of the word Zionism, which is basically become a catch-all. It doesn't mean much, and it has a whole spectrum of meaning. As I'll show, it can mean, like, if you look at a leftist Israeli, you ask them what Zionism is, they'll tell you, a lot of people tell you it's Western expansion, like settler expansionism, right? And they say, oh, I'm anti-Zionist, I'm against that. Where the idea of, like, taking Israel off the map, they'd be like, that's insane. Like, obviously no. So are they a Zionist? Or is it a Houthi pirate that Hasan's been hyping up, and a Houthi flag that says "curse upon the Jews" and "death to Israel"? Is that Zionism? What does it mean? What does it mean? People call me a Zionist all the time on the internet. To what extent does it? The extent of my Zionism is this: do I think Israel should be wiped off the map? No. That's the extent, and that's all it takes to hit me with that catch-all. You know what I mean? I find it's turned into a slur. I'm gonna get into all that. I hope you guys will listen. I'm grateful to everybody who's a fan of both of us.
So in other words, he's saying that people who say we're against Zionism are really just saying they're against Jewish people. And it's now being used as a slur. So that's why every single time someone like Ethan, who is Jewish, brings up Semitism or anti-Semitism, people always respond back with, well, what about Israel? That's the argument that he's putting forward.
I hope you will not take this personally. It's completely reasonable to be a fan of both of us, and I'm grateful that you're able to put aside whatever perceived differences we've had and able to enjoy both of us. If you decide you can't watch, difficult, I will not judge anybody for walking away. Perhaps at this point in time, it's better for both of us deciding to depart.
Fast forward.
But once again, and I also want to say to everyone who's expressed their support to me over the past 2 days, and it was just, my own community was like, I felt gaslighting me and just completely.
Fast forward.
There was a very hopeful push towards some more healthy discourse that I felt encouraged by, and I want to thank the people that who did that, and so thank you. Yeah. Also, I want to say to Hasan that I appreciate all the times you've defended me from your community. I know I'm not one to hold someone responsible for what their fans do, as you probably know that our audience does crazy shit. However, I do think that while you tell everybody to leave me alone or whatever it is you say, that's your rhetoric, your tone, the way you carry yourself on this topic is the reason why I'm being harassed by so many people online, a large part of your audience. So let's start from the beginning.
To be fair, Hasan doesn't mention Ethan on his broadcasts. he tells his audience to leave Ethan alone. Now, how that means that they should go and harass Ethan, I don't know. But Hasan has consistently told his audience to leave Ethan the fuck alone. As Ethan has admitted right now.
It's an album of the stories. Just to catch you guys up to date, this started with this tweet I saw. By the way, I pulled this last night just to see where it was at. When I posted it, it had like 30,000 likes. It says 90,000 likes, 2 million views. I never heard of this guy, but, or no, it's from, first of all, Comrade Casey. Yeah, that Comrade Casey, the guy who is a fucking absolute creepy weirdo who was posting Hamas simping shit via love. It was so weird. This dude. Anyway, you guys remember that whole thing? He typed in and said, "Please stop talking about me," and we'll continue to talk about me. Very good. And again, I'd also like to wonder, what the fuck is it exactly I've said or done to like belong in this image? I know what you're saying, right? What have I done? I continually ask myself, why am I being held up with these group of people?
I mean, maybe the problem, as Ethan is probably going to prove throughout the rest of this video, is that maybe it's not you that you should be asking. Maybe Ethan should be asking other people what he's done. Now, to be fair, nothing that Ethan has done warrants this type of hatred that he's about to speak about. So let's get that out of the way. But nonetheless, maybe if you want to know what you have done, just as a general rule for everybody, instead of asking yourself, maybe ask other people. Maybe they can give you a better idea.
And anyway, Comrade Casey said, "I'm assembling team." This guy, Hasan said, "I hope they commit suicide squad." And which I found, I'm like, wow, okay, so 90,000 likes telling me to kill myself for a belief. And again, this is part of the problem. Like, what have I done? Like, why am I in these memes getting 2 million views of me telling me to kill myself? Because apparently I'm like anti-Islam or I hate Gaza or whatever. I mean, Yasmin Gold was just blasted for saying horrible shit about like, I don't remember the verbatim, but he said something like Muslim culture or Arab culture is inferior, which is insane, right? It's fucked up. It's insane. When have I ever said anything like that? You know what I mean? Never. Okay. So anyway, but since when is telling people to kill themselves like normal? And again, part of the irony of this whole thing is that on the left, they're basically willing to undermine everything they believe in. I guess at the behest of going after Zionists because they see Zionists as subhuman, they see them as Nazis. They've given each other permission and consent and the green light to essentially target whoever they perceive as Zionists with whatever abuse they deem necessary because they're Nazis and they're killing children and innocent people.
That's true. A lot of people on the left do have that opinion. And you should never tell anyone to kill themselves. A lot of people on the left do think that Zionism is akin to Nazism. Now we can debate the nuances of that, but to understand why that's the case, I think you would have to maybe speak to one of them. Why do they think that Zionism, as it's currently being practiced, is akin to something like Nazism? I think the proof is pretty evident in what's going on, not just in Gaza today, but what has been going on for almost 70 years. Now, you might not like the comparison, you might think it's bad, you might think it's not well expanded on, but nonetheless, that is an opinion that they hold. And if you want to know why they think that, you should probably ask them. As for what has Ethan said that warrants someone wishing he commits suicide, the answer is nothing. And that's the one thing about this grievance I think he's true. He hasn't said or done anything that warrants any type of hatred like this.
In Gaza. That is my problem. Anyway, I responded to this tweet telling me to kill myself with 90,000 likes. I said, "Deranged shit, telling me to kill myself with 36,000 likes at the time, 36. What exactly did I said or did? Nobody has ever been able to tell me." Moving on to the next one. It made me think of this tweet from our wonderful Houthi pirate, the cute Houthi pirate that Hasan interviewed. And I remembered this tweet he put out. Just a cute tweet from our favorite Houthi. Same people telling me to kill myself love this guy. And that's true. They do. They love him. Hasan interviewed him. He hypes him up even as recent as like this week, okay?
But once again, you can't make a can't make a video on how all these Hasan community followers and all the people that take his side constantly generalize Zionism with Judaism or the Jewish population and then make a statement like, well, all the people that support what that person tweeted also support this pirate and what he's saying, and they all love him. I think that's, a bit of a cognitive dissonance there, a bit of a weird bias there, but nonetheless.
This is a tweet he put out. The execution that we will carry out on all Zionists. And it features somebody whose arms is tied behind their back and they've been impaled by a spike through their asshole and up and through their mouth. Now, I would like to know what people go, Hasan talked to him and he said he's not a Houthi and he says he doesn't hate Jews. Why is it you understand how this works with every other minority group? Like, do you really think that if I ask this guy, like, tell me what do you think a Zionist is, that he would have some nuance to answer about the difference? I mean, as you'll see, this kid is a rampant anti-Semite and a violent Houthi.
Why do you think he wouldn't? Do you assume that he wouldn't have an opinion on that? Maybe he does. Now, it might very well be the case that this kid is an anti-Semite. That's fair. But this doesn't say anything about anti-Semitism, unless you buy into Ethan's earlier point that the group on the left that he's branding as Hasan's community, and let's, for the purpose of this conversation, let's say they are Hasan's community, that Hasan's community doesn't differentiate between Zionism and Judaism. You have to buy into that worldview that Ethan is presenting here, that Hasan's community buys into, to believe that what he is saying, this kid is saying in this tweet, is akin to him saying the same thing about Jews. That he's using Zionism as a slur for Judaism. And there's nothing that he's presented so far that gives us that evidence. Now, he is going to present some evidence, but we'll see how much that stands up or how relevant it is.
Houthi terrorist, which I will prove to you guys, in my opinion, beyond a shadow of a doubt. However, so like this kind of rhetoric, frankly, disgusts and scares me. People call me a Zionist. People call my wife a Zionist. It's my family. It's my children's life. Okay, and this is a guy someone who I consider a friend, is talking about how cute and funny and awesome he is. Well, the immediate reaction to this was our subreddit getting mobbed by Hasan fans, probably snarkers, overwhelming the comments, overwhelming it. Now, here's what they say. Top comment. This dude isn't a Houthi. He literally said it in an interview with Hasan. Like, how fucking obtuse are you, seriously? Like, David Duke says he's not a Klan member and he doesn't actually hate black people. It's like, okay, so I guess he doesn't. Like, are you fucking dumb? Okay, I'm getting too emotional. I'll calm it down. But yeah, obviously.
No, that's fair. The kid said that he wasn't a Houthi. That doesn't mean he's not a Houthi, obviously. That is fair. But now, that comes with an underlying perception or understanding that the comparison that he just made is valid. That the Houthis are the same as being a part of the KKK or a white supremacist. Now, I don't believe that that's fair, and I don't even think it's true. In fact, the Houthis, as despicable as you might think their beliefs are not a supremacist group that rose to oppress other people. They are, for better or worse, a rebel group. You don't have to like their beliefs. You don't even have to support them or even humanize them. But I don't think the comparison is apt to believe that the Houthis are the same as white supremacists in their core. Not necessarily in their beliefs, maybe, but in their core, I think is unfair. But we'll continue.
He's in a Houthi. He literally said it to Hasan. Okay, great. Also, this is the part that they go after. This tweet is fake. Just like Ethan, you morons have been duped. Now, I'm thinking to myself, I saw this tweet. I remember it. This is a real tweet. What's going on here? Then people uncritically start accepting it. Wait, for real? Jesus Christ, the misinfo is nuts. Then they respond, yes, and psycho fans that are willing to believe Muslim Arabs are inherently evil will fall for this, like Ethan. Now, excuse me. I said this kid's a piece of shit and all you heard is Arabs are evil. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude?
Now, that's an important point. He said that this kid is a terrorist or he's anti-Semitic, and all these people, all the commenters that he is replying to or who's responding to the post are just accusing him of saying all Arabs are evil. Now, remember that point, because it's going to become very ironic in a couple of minutes. Remember that point.
Like, why is that what you heard? Continuing, here's a Hasan. Both of these, this guy's a Hasanabi head flare. Honestly, it's really sad watching Ethan slip into this rabbit hole and showing his bias. Brings back memory of that forsaken leftover episode when he wouldn't even engage with Palestinian plight and kept saying, what about Israel? I know what he's talking about exactly, but essentially, they've all, and this is just an excerpt, but the whole chat was like, this is misinfo. Ethan's like, lying, and this kid is innocent. He would never tweet this. He would never ever tweet this. Moving on to the next one, I did a tiny bit of research and I found the archive, thankfully. I would have lost my mind if I didn't, because I swear I saw it. Here's the tweet. It happened. Execution that we will carry out on all Zionists. Here it is, from this kid, July 23rd, 2024. By the way, he's banned on all social medias, and there's a reason for that. It's because he's a fucking terrorist and he posts shit like this. Okay? Does that surprise anybody?
Okay. Yeah, so the kid did tweet it, obviously. And people saying that he didn't tweet it are wrong. They're either lying or just stupid. But once again, the execution that we will carry out on all Zionists doesn't say anything about Jewish people, right? Unless you buy into the proposition that Ethan put forward at the very beginning of this segment, that the Hasan community use Zionism and Jews interchangeably, and everyone they support also do the same as
well. I said, so now that we've proven it's real, I suppose we'll see a lot of apologies and corrections. Of course, we did not see that. But kind of what continues to shock me is, people on the left are so hypercritical of MAGA people being like divorced from reality and not listening to reason and not acknowledging facts and kind of just thinking, and whatever they think is real, they speak and it becomes real. That's literally what just happened in that chat. I posted something that was true, and because it went against their dogma, they swarmed our subreddit to accuse me of lying with zero evidence, and people uncritically believe them. That to me is disturbing, and that to me is dangerous. Here's a post that again doesn't have a lot of engagement, but I was struck by the fact that it had minus likes. Excuse me. As I said, I'm getting over something nasty.
Now, this isn't really relevant to the video that we're making. Needless to say that this comment here is pointing out how the people in this thread are being unreasonable. And Ethan agrees with this comment, and nevertheless, Ethan's right here. This comment thread on what he said was being unreasonable. The kid did tweet that tweet out, and they were supporting him, and they were being mean to Ethan. That's fair. We don't need to see the rest of this segment. Fast forward.
Shut up and take it. And once again, what does anti-Semitism have to do with Zionism? If I'm talking about anti-Semitism, and your response is, I just don't care because of all this stuff happening in Gaza, how is it related? You're the one conflating Zionism and Judaism, and you do it all the time. Next.
Now, he said that again, that when he brings up anti-Semitism, people always bring up Gaza. Well, I think one of the main points that he's leaving out, that the big reason why the podcast between him and Hasan broke up was after the October 7th attack. Not to say that people in Hasan's community, or not to say that Hasan and Ethan have different opinions on the October 7th attack. They clearly have different perspectives on it. That's why it literally broke up. Ethan has said this plenty of times before. Whenever Ethan talks about anti-Semitism, he talks about it in relation to the Israel war in one way, shape, or form. Whether it's talking about the Houthis, whether it's talking about Hezbollah, whether it's talking about Hamas, or whether it's talking about the college protests. All of those have to do with the Israeli war against its neighbors. All of that does. So he's bringing up issues, or he's bringing up instances where he's talking about things that are directly tied to Israel's war, and therefore, people are going to respond with, well, what about? Well, what about? Well, what about? Obviously, that is going to be the absolute natural response to that, because once again, your criticism is rooted, your showing of anti-Semitism, your showcasing of anti-Semitism, your criticism of anti-Semitism, as you should, is surrounded by the activities of the Israeli war, whether it be criticizing the college protests, which flared up because of the Israeli war, whether it's you criticizing the Houthi pirates, who only entered this war after Israel started attacking Gaza, whether it's your criticism of Hezbollah or Hamas. All of it. You never spoke about them before. You spoke about them after the war began. Your podcast with Hasan didn't stop before. It stopped after October 7th. All of it is tied to the Israeli war. So obviously they're going to consistently bring that back, because once again, you keep pointing to anti-Semitic tropes and anti-Semitic instances that all occur after the Israeli war had begun. That's why they constantly connect the two. That's why.
Here's another one Hasan had. I thought Ethan said he wasn't a Zionist, right? Fuck Zionist. For real, fuck Zionism. He is. I mean, again, there's a famous clip of him calling the West Bank Palestine terrorist city. I'm not sure what that one is, but again, I'm willing to address anything that comes up. I thought Ethan said he wasn't a Zionist. So they're saying, like, why should he care about... Hold on, let me make sure I'm doing this in order. So they're saying, in response to the spike, this person being impaled by a spike to death, and him saying, I want to kill all Zionists like this, they say, why should Ethan care? He's not a Zionist. In fact, this is proof he's a Zionist, because he doesn't like this. I thought Ethan said he wasn't a Zionist, right? Fuck Zionists. And again, reminder, this is a picture of someone being impaled from the asshole to their mouth. And people are saying, fuck Zionists, for real, fuck Zionists. These people are essentially co-signing these threats of violence while calling me a Zionist. because I apparently care about people being spiked up the asshole.
Well, it's a drawing of someone being impaled, not a picture, for starters.
FBI crime stats. This came out, I think, just last month. Jews make up 2% of the population and 15% of hate crimes in America. Must be nice for people unaffected by anti-Semitism to tell Jews it doesn't matter. It must be nice to have that, to come from that place of moral superiority. You're completely unaffected. It's quite stark. I mean, African-American hate crimes are still number one, but for the proportion of Jews making up like 2% of the population of America, the fact that they're number two is pretty stark.
Yeah, it's horrible. No one's denying that it's horrible. So far, he hasn't shown any evidence to suggest anyone telling him that he should get over anti-Semitism.
So again, you'll hear this kind of relates to a statement Hasan says. Maybe I'll pull it up now. Okay, 1 sec. Hasan says 16 in the doc. Here it is. 1 sec, you guys. 16 in the doc. This relates to this.
What you're about to see is very hilarious. Remember what Ethan said earlier, how people on the right, or the people on the extreme left, are like MAGA, and how they just hear what they want to hear. Remember that.
I think what's crazy about this
He's
is that,
talking
like,
about I'll say this, I don't even remember what me and Frogan were arguing about, but he's basically defending Frogan. Do you remember what happened, Dan? Stand there. What happened with Frogan? I literally don't remember the details of it. You don't want to say it. That's fine.
you unfollowed her.
I say what?
You unfollowed her, and then she talked about it in Discord.
Is that what he's talking about? Oh, this from the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's what it's about. When I unfollowed her, and then she said I hate Arabs and stuff in Hasan's Discord. And instead of and this is a mod on his channel. Instead of having a word.
They got the timeline mixed up. This wasn't Hasan talking about Frogan after Ethan unfollowed her. This was actually just recently, when Ethan and Frogan had a argument. And I think he was watching another video about the fall of leftovers, and he was commenting on that. Hasan was.
With her about what's going on. He actually chastised me for what? Let's see.
Ethan is very frustrated and very emotional in this moment, but doesn't recognize that, like, perhaps a Lebanese woman who's a hijabi in the United States of America could also be very emotional in this exact same moment. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's so... And the reality of the matter is, anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry, whereas Islamophobia is a very acceptable form of bigotry. So being the bigger person in this...
Now, what Hasan just said, let's repeat what he just said, because I think it's very important. Okay, so let's go back a bit and repeat what he just said.
Emotional in this exact same moment. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's so... And the reality of the matter is, anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry, whereas Islamophobia is a very acceptable form of bigotry. So being the bigger person in this situation, regardless of your feelings...
So anyway, and God forbid you actually...
Now, before Ethan tells us what he thinks Hasan just said, Hasan's exact words were, anti-Semitism is an acceptable, like, we've accepted that anti-Semitism is bigotry. But we haven't accepted that Islamophobia is bigotry. Like, it's an acceptable form of bigotry, while anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry. So in other words, our society is much quicker to call out anti-Semitism and shut it down than it is to call out Islamophobia and shut it down. That's the point that he is making, and anyone with a clear grasp of the English language can probably figure that out. He's saying that anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry. We've all agreed on that. Whereas Islamophobia is an accepted form of bigotry. That's what he's saying. Now let's listen to Ethan's interpretation of what he just said.
Actually read the chat. But what I'm hearing, frankly, is that anti-Semitism is not really an issue, and so you shouldn't. Your complaints are less equal than Frogan's complaints, because Islamophobia is more serious than anti-Semitism, despite, by the way, the fact that, as I pointed out, in reality, or not the opposite, because there is Islamophobia, but like this claim that anti-Semitism doesn't exist because everybody knows it wrong.
Notice what he did there. He just interpreted what Hasan said in two different ways in a matter of seconds. Hasan initially said anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry, and Islamophobia is an acceptable form of bigotry. In other words, we are more likely to be Islamophobic and you look past Islamophobia than we are anti-Semitism. That's the point he just made. Ethan then interpreted what Hasan said as, well, what Hasan is really saying here is, anti-Semitism is not a problem and you shouldn't worry about it. Islamophobia is a bigger problem. That's not what Hasan said. Hasan is saying that anti-Semitism is an issue, but it's an issue that we all recognize. Whereas Islamophobia, it's a little bit harder to convince people of it, is what he's saying. But then a couple seconds later he says, well, Hasan's position is contradicted by the fact, and he's about to show the stat again, and then he says that Hasan said that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. Let's look at that again.
Is more serious than less is not really an issue, and so you shouldn't. Your complaints are less equal than Frogan's complaints because Islamophobia is more serious than anti-Semitism.
This is what he initially interprets what Hasan said as, which is not what he said. He just said that Islamophobia is more acceptable than anti-Semitism. He didn't say that you shouldn't, that they're not equal. He didn't say that, oh, okay, well, you shouldn't worry about anti-Semitism. He's just pointing out what he perceives to be a fact. And then, seconds later, Ethan says this about the same clip that he said this initial comment on.
Despite, by the way, the fact that, as I pointed out, in reality, or not the opposite, because there is Islamophobia, but like this claim that anti-Semitism doesn't exist because everybody knows it wrong.
He never made the claim that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. 2 seconds later, he said, Hasan said, well, Islamophobia is worse than anti-Semitism, and therefore you shouldn't worry about anti-Semitism. A second later, he says, oh, Hasan actually said anti-Semitism doesn't exist because everyone knows it's wrong. That's not what was said. Now, maybe he interpreted that way, sure, Ethan, but that's not what he said. Hasan is making a very clear point, whether you agree with him or not, which is anti-Semitism, everyone knows it's wrong. So therefore, it's an unacceptable form of bigotry. That's not the case with Islamophobia. And whether you agree with Hasan or not, that's the position that he's taken, or that's the position that he's expressed here. He didn't say that you shouldn't worry about anti-Semitism. He didn't even say that anti-Semitism doesn't exist, like Ethan is claiming that he is implying there. In fact, it's the quite opposite. He's literally admitting that it does exist. But let's think a little bit deeper here. In the last, let's say, 10 years, how many presidents have been elected to office saying something to the effect that we should ban the Jews from doing anything? The answer is 0. How many presidents have been elected to office after saying something to the effect of, we should ban Muslims from coming into the country? We can name at least one. Right? We can name at least one. Not to mention the West has been at war with Muslim countries, and not to mention the other parts of the West that's not the US, who are a bit more Islamophobic than the US American counterparts. But nonetheless, let's continue.
As I perceiving it, is absolutely false. I've never seen more open anti-Semitism in my life, my whole life. The way that it's being normalized by the left and the right, and it's being kind of, in a case like this, he's normalizing it. He's normalizing it. He's greenlighting it. Again, FBI stats. Jews are number 2. 2% of the population, 15% of all hate crimes. Okay.
Once again, Hasan never said anti-Semitism doesn't exist. And to say that he's normalizing anti-Semitism, but pointing out to the fact that Islamophobia is much more accepted widely than anti-Semitism is not him diminishing anti-Semitism. It's not. It's pointing out to a very relevant fact.
This is all I'm here. This is
I
what I
think
hear.
what's crazy about this is that,
It's
like,
disgusting. Frankly, it's disgusting. It's a disgusting thing to say in the face of rising anti-Semitism, which once again apparently has nothing to do with Zionism.
He keeps making that point about Zionism, but nonetheless, yeah, there is rising anti-Semitism. Why do you think that's the case? Now, let's be clear. Just because Israel is committing what many perceive to be war crimes doesn't give anyone the right to be anti-Semitic. That's fucked up. But nonetheless, there is a correlation between what Israel is doing and towards the rise in anti-Semitism. Just the same way there's a correlation between 9/11 and what happens with Islamophobia. Unfortunately, that is the case. When tragedy or horrible things happen, people get a little bit more angry, a little bit more bigoted. It's not fair. It's not nice. It's not good. It should be dissuaded. But that is the case. It sucks, but it is the case.
Ethan is.
So why is it, that like when Stop Asian Hate, that movement happened, when, these terrible hate crimes were happening to Asian people during COVID, of like random acts of violence in New York City and elsewhere, people like Hasan, excuse me, and left rallied behind them. Nobody said, well, there's a chance China let it out of a lab, so, maybe the problem is that you need to get a hold of China. Maybe you wouldn't be getting punched in the face if China wasn't locking down its country and...
And once again, he's making accusations about Hasan that he hasn't actually proven yet. Hasan has never said that, oh, you're suffering from anti-Semitism, oh, therefore you should be mad at Israel. He hasn't. Even in the videos that Ethan has shown, Hasan hasn't said those things. Why he constantly starts going on this weird tangent, I don't know. But we'll see.
whatever. That's what I hear from people like Hasan.
Can I just say real quick? There's a few things I want to say, but I want you to. I know you have a lot to get through, so I'd rather say it at the end. But there are a couple things.
Okay.
It's in response.
Okay.
And what he says in response is going to be very interesting.
And very emotional in this moment, but doesn't recognize that, like, perhaps a Lebanese woman who's a hijabi in the United States of America could also be very emotional in this exact same moment. You know what I mean?
Not to mention, like, he kind of clipped this video of Hasan, like, maybe play the full context of what he's talking about. Not to say that it would make it better, but I think it would make the argument that he's trying to present a bit more coherent, maybe.
Like, that's what's so... And
once again, comparing actions, I quietly unfollowed her to avoid any problems. She was posting what I perceived as sympathetic posts, encouraging and glorifying Hamas violence against Israelis. You want to see it? I unfollowed her. She started making a huge scene, including going into Hasan's community as a moderator and saying, I hate Arabs. The actions are not equal, not even close.
Now, this is not Ethan's fault. This is just like a confusion of the timeline. What Hasan is saying in that, talking about in that video, came out months after Ethan unfollowed Froga, and this actually happened recently. So yeah, you can't really blame him for this. Yeah.
The reality of the matter is, anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry, whereas Islamophobia is a very acceptable form of bigotry. So
again, her problem with Islamophobia is worth listening to. It's very real, and we have to listen to her. And frankly, she can't really do anything wrong. It seems like no matter what, because she's emotional, or she's a woman who's wearing a hijabi. He said, I don't know.
Notice the turn that Ethan takes here. All Hasan said was, once again, that Islamophobia is more accepted in society than anti-Semitism is. That's all he's saying. And all Ethan's doing is taking that and hearing what he wants to hear, which is, oh, well, then Frogan can be as racist and anti-Semitic and horrible as she wants because she's a Muslim, or because she's a woman, or because she wears a hijab, or whatever. Then once again, he's only hearing what he wants to hear. The video that he showed does not present what he thinks it presents.
How to say it? Hijabi.
Yeah.
And so therefore what? She gets a pass on everything, and I never get to complain about anti-Semitism, even though Jews on a whole, according to FBI stats, there's more hate crimes against Jews than there are at this moment than Arabs or Muslims, according to FBI stats.
Now, mind you, he didn't say you can't complain either. But mind you, hate crimes is not the only way to measure hate. right? Hate crimes is for something very specific, something very bad. You shouldn't be committing any crime, let alone hate crimes. But it's not the full measure of hate, just for the record.
Not saying it's not important. I'm just saying what he's saying here is factually wrong. It's just an outright lie to make it seem like Jews are complaining about something that doesn't exist, even though they are. And it's a gaslighting campaign that continues to go on.
Once again, Hasan literally in the clip said the anti-Semitism does exist and is a recognized form of bigotry. Literal words of his. And Ethan's interpretation is Hasan is saying that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. Make it make sense, people. Make it make sense.
That's my take on that part. Going back. I'm skipping around a little bit, trying to make sense, but we're getting there. We're getting there. If you guys want to look, the whole FBI census was posted recently, the new one, and it's interesting. I mean, check it out if you're interested. But yeah, FBI crime stats on USA, telling people that anti-Semitism doesn't matter must be awesome and nice when literally you don't care.
He didn't say that anti-Semitism doesn't matter as well. So Ethan, in one clip, has suggested that Hasan said that anti-Semitism doesn't matter, that Hasan said anti-Semitism, using the exact same clip, has said anti-Semitism doesn't exist, and using the same clip has said that Frogan, who's a Muslim, should be able to say and do whatever she wants, and Ethan shouldn't complain about anti-Semitism, and then went back to saying that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. That's what Hasan said, apparently, using the same clip, and then now goes back to saying that, oh, well, Hasan's saying that anti-Semitism is not a big deal. So using one clip, he's come to 5 different conclusions. Amazing.
Do you think it's normal? So now the question goes to like, so first they said the tweet was fake about the pike, the killing Zionists with a pike. Okay, that's proven real. But then they say, well, he's not a Houthi pirate. He's just like a cool, awesome Yemenis kid who's kind of just like good kid, mad city or whatever. Kendrick reference. Not now, Ethan. Do you think it's no? So I'd like to explore that accusation that he is not a Houthi. Okay, let's look at some of the evidence. Here he is with the AK and combat fatigues. Now in poverty-stricken Yemen, do you think it's possible to get Yemeni? Thank you, Yemeni, not Yemenis. Do you think it's possible? Or do you think it's likely to get an AK or an automatic assault rifle in Yemen, poverty-stricken, if you're not affiliated with the Houthis? I mean, Houthis, guns are expensive as fuck, and it's kind of surprising, dude. And I just continue, dude. There's so much evidence this dude is Jew-hating terrorist. Just say you support the Houthis, stand on your shit. Again, I respect that. Just say you support the Houthis, which Hasan does, and we'll get to that. But so here he is with a rifle, and again, okay, maybe he found that. I don't know.
To be fair, the Houthis aren't the only militant group in Yemen. However, let's assume that he is a Houthi. Okay, let's, for the sake of argument, concede that he is a Houthi. So what? Now here comes the bigger issue with the way the West views Eastern wars and the West views the rest of the world. And when I say the West, I'm not talking about philosophically the West. I'm talking about socially the West. And we'll get to that in a bit.
How you get a high-powered rifle in Yemen without being affiliated with the Houthis, living in Houthi territory, but maybe he found it. I don't know. Here he is on top of a boat. Ship, we bombed the ship. This is him on a boat in the sea that was commandeered by Houthis. Here he is. This is a translation that it wouldn't translate for me in the pictures, but feel free to do it. It says, ready to sacrifice, longing for martyrdom on top of a pirated vessel. Maybe he's talking about maybe he's talking about something else. I don't know. Longing for martyrdom, ready for sacrifice. Who knows? Maybe he's talking about something else, possible, right? Here he is singing a little ditty on TikTok that goes, do you threaten us with what we are waiting for, son of a Jew? Nice little ditty there. Once again, clearly making a healthy distinction between Jews and Israelis. But just because he told Hasan through a translator once that he doesn't hate Jews, just Zionists, we're going to give him a pass. He's a good kid. And actually, we should prop him up. He's awesome. He's hot, by the way. Cute kid.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the kid is anti-Semitic. What does that have to do with Hasan?
So that's good. Yeah, that's fucked up. And now I'm giving myself a note to look at number 12. One moment. Here he is. Now here, this is from a story. This is from the interview Hasan did with him.
Now, mind you, this kid doesn't know English. He doesn't know English. Mind you, he doesn't know English.
At the time, I have to admit, this interview blew my mind. I thought that this would be a bridge too far. and that Twitch would step in and do something. He's interviewing a terrorist. And it's not that he's interviewing a terrorist, because I've seen Hasan try to deflect to saying, oh, CNN reached me, BBC reached me, they want to talk to him, therefore it's real journalism. Hasan did not ask him one critical question. In fact, the opposite. It was a complete puff piece where he sucked him off, elevated him, was uncritical. And even in the moments of absolutely insane statements like this, he essentially covers for him and acts like ignorant.
Chinese people, but one of the captain was Chinese, and he did caught with them, and he danced to music with them, and he was vibing, so he likes him. Yeah.
So I mean, what?
Yes, he just admitted to being a terrorist who's hanging out with hostages. That's literally just what happened, and Hasan knows it. That's why he's laughing a lot and trying to deflect.
That's so.
Now, I don't know what Hasan knows or Hasan doesn't know in that situation, but to suggest that Hasan, that's the interpretation that he made, I think is a bit weird. But sure, let's, for the sake of this argument, let's accept that.
So crazy.
Yes, it
So
is.
they're just chilling with the captains? Like, I don't understand.
You don't understand? Why would? Do you think anyone would just get access to hang out with like these hostages? Why would he be hanging out with hostages? I don't know. But Hasan does a good way of deflecting it and being like, oh no, this is just funny, silly stuff. You know what I mean? Awesome. Moving on to the next part. Here's more terrorcore tweets, I like to call them, from our friend cute Luffy IRL. There's a couple more for you guys to enjoy. This one is whatever. This one is the ships we bombed and sank. Okay, not him, because he's not a Houthi, but apparently they bombed and sank stuff. To every Zionist, I will put this into your stomach. It's him once again with a assault rifle, looks like an AK-47. So that's the second death threat he's made against Zionists. And of course, as we know that he loves in his songs, "Son of a Jew, we will kill you." There's a healthy distinction here between Zionists and Jews, and therefore, why should I care at all that Hasan is propping up a dude who's threatening to kill?
But even if we were to follow this line of thinking, that when every time the kid says Zionist, he means Jews and so on and so forth interchangeably, why does he constantly use the word Zionist then? Now, there's two explanations to that. One is that he's very well media trained. So he's so media trained that he sang a song about he's going to kill the son of a Jew, which is racist, anti-Semitic, horrible. But then at the same time, so un-media trained that he uses the word Zionist instead of Jew. Maybe it's because he knows that it's anti-Semitic. Maybe that could be the reason why. Or maybe he makes an actual distinction between Jews and Zionists. Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know. But to say that he's just anti-Semitic could be possible. But it's strange that he doesn't use the word Jewish or Jew and only uses the word Zionist. When in other videos like Ethan just showed, the kid is more than willing to use the word Jew. I wonder why that's the case.
Zionist, who clearly has no healthy distinction between the two. And he continues to blur the lines between people who say Zionist and people who mean like normal-ass people who aren't fucking like genocide committers, and opening the door to rampant, blatant, open anti-Semitism of the guys using the slur Zionism, which has no fucking meaning, no definition, because it's so broad, it's so nebulous, it means nothing. And it can be employed 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different people, and people use it just as a matter of fact, like everybody knows what it means. People start...
Now, mind you, this kid is a Houthi, like Ethan has just explained. The Houthis, when they talk about Zionism, the same way when Hezbollah talks about Zionism, or Hamas talks about Zionism, they're referring to Israel. More specifically, the Israeli government. More specifically, the Israeli government mindset of expansion into their territory. That's not a controversial statement. Maybe Ethan thinks that when the kid says Zionism or Jews, that he's speaking about every single Jew on the planet or every single Zionist on the planet. No. He's a Houthi, as you said. He's from Yemen, as you said. They are obviously referring to Israel, and they're obviously, more than anything, referring to the Israeli government in their form of Zionism. A form of Zionism that, by the way, Ethan does not agree with. Right? He does not agree with expansion into Gaza and into the West Bank. He does not agree with the genocide of Gaza. He doesn't. So when the kid, the Houthi, as he's rightfully pointed out, speaks about Jews and the Zionists, even if you think that he uses it interchangeably, he's speaking specifically about Israel. Unless you think that this kid, who you don't believe has some sort of comprehensive knowledge on the issue, actually sat down and came to the idea that every single Jew in the planet is a Zionist, and therefore their war against every single Jewish person in the planet, whether it's in Tel Aviv or in California. Is that what you're thinking that this kid means by Zionist? When this kid says Zionist, even if you think it's being interchangeably used as Jew, or Jewish, I should say, he's clearly referring to Israel. When the Houthis use these words, they're clearly referring to Israel. You don't have to accept that fact, but it's the truth.
Started calling Bernie Sanders and AOC Zionists. I forget why, but they did something that everyone perceived as being pro-Israel or something, and now they're Zionists. And you know, it's like, well, I know AOC's not a Zionist. You know what I mean? But according to him, we need to kill her. We need to put her on a spike. We need to put AOC on a spike, kill her, shoot her with a gun. That's what Hasan thinks is not a problem. Moving on. So I don't know. Is he affiliated with the Houthis? I mean, listen. At this point, I believe that it's impossible to deny. I do. I think it's impossible to deny that this kid is affiliated, deeply involved with the Houthis. He's on ships. He's blowing up ships. He's hanging out with hostages. He's walking around with guns, combat fatigues. There's enough evidence, all right, to at least be like, hey, you know what? Let's not fucking spike Zionists, okay? But
now, let's say that everything Ethan said was true. It's really not evidence that he's a Houthi, but let's assume that he is. What is the issue with him being a Houthi? Here comes the Western perspective on things, and the Western perspective on things is very important because we need to know, because everyone's perspective is important. The word terrorist does a lot of heavy lifting. It does a heck of a lot of heavy lifting. As the old saying goes, right, or it's from a movie, I'm not too sure which movie it was. One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. You might not like the Houthis, and there's many reasons not to. You might not agree with their activities, and there's many reasons not to. You might hate the fact that innocent people have died at their hands. Of course, any moral person would hate that. But once again, the Houthis are a rebel group. To you, they're terrorists, yes. But to so many other people, especially in Yemen, not everyone, but so many other people, especially in Yemen, they are a rebel group. They are trying to fight against an oppression. They are trying to fight against horrendous governments. They're trying to fight against foreign interference. You might not appreciate it, then that's fine. You don't have to appreciate it. But I think the distinction is important here, and the way we view things is very important. In the West, when we say the words Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthi and Al-Qaeda and Taliban and all these horrible terrorist organizations, we believe that because they're terrorist organizations, that the words themselves, the names themselves, do all the heavy lifting. They're terrorist organizations. Why would we ever support them? But always remember, we have always supported terrorist organizations in the West. And I don't mean that as like, oh, well, the West is bad. No, I mean it just as a legitimate fact. We have funded rebel groups before. We continue to fund rebel groups. But when we fund them, we call them rebel groups. We don't call them terrorists. The Houthis are terrorists, right? Because we don't fund them and they don't like us. But the Kurds are a rebel group because they're doing a fight against someone that we don't like. See how the Western perspective could change. And then it goes into the anti-Semitism aspect of this. This kid is 19 years old, or 20 now. By the time Hasan interviewed him was 19. He, for almost his whole life, lived under a civil war that's killed an ungodly amount of people. What a lot of people call a genocide. A genocide that is supported by the American government and supported by the other Gulf countries against Yemen. That's the environment this kid grew up in. And as much as we want to sit here and pretend like, oh, well, this kid grew up and he just wanted to join the Houthis because he had nothing better to do, the fact of the matter is, in places like Yemen, in Gaza, even to some degree in Lebanon, and to some degree in almost any country that is war-torn, that is functionally a constant war-fighting country, you don't have choices. You don't have a lot of good choices. Sure, you could choose not to join the rebel group, and that's easy for us to say. And the people that don't choose, or the people that choose not to join rebel groups, choose not to fight, choose not to be part of the violence, kudos to them. And that's good. That should be the decision. But it's easy for us to sit here and say that anyone who joins these rebel groups, these quote-unquote terrorist organizations, are bad people, when, as it pertains to North America at least, Canada and the United States of America, every war that we have fought in since the Civil War, for the most part, haven't touched our shores. Yes, 9/11 happened. Yes, Pearl Harbor happened. But the Second World War didn't take place in North America. And 9/11 and the Iraq War did not take place in the streets of New York. So it's easy for us to sit here and be like, hey, you know what? Look how bad this kid is. He joined the Houthis. Imagine being born into a country where the only thing you know is violence. The only thing you know is genocide. The only thing you know is pain. The only thing you know is death and destruction. And then imagine telling that child who grows up into be a young man, hey, you're a bad person because you're anti-Semitic. It's a weird view to have. It's an extremely privileged view to have. It's a view that everyone should have, because everyone should be so privileged to not live in a world that's so war-torn. But it's a view that most people, unfortunately, a lot of people, in some of these countries, can't have. Because they're a product of their environment the same way all of us are a product of our environment. It is almost impossible for people that are born in the West to come to grips with the idea of being born in a country where buildings being blown to pieces is a regular happening, where children being killed are a regular happening. It's almost impossible for us to comprehend that. That's why we look down on it. That's why we look down on the people that are born there and choose these extremist lifestyles. That's not to say it excuses it. It doesn't. But if you're going to make the argument, or if you're going to be the empathetic person that Ethan's trying to be, maybe be a bit more nuanced.
No, his fans, here's what they do. They first call me a liar that the tweet's not real. Then, once the tweet's real, they say he's not a Houthi. So, also you're lying. There's no point to which reality catches up with these people. There's no point in which me presenting facts, disputable facts, will change their mind that whatever they're obsessed with is real, and that me, a Zionist, is lying. That's the beginning, and that's the end. Maybe, and then I see people, the next part of the argument is this. So, you're lying, it's not a real tweet. Okay, it's a real tweet. Well, he's not a Houthi. You're lying about that. Okay, fine, he might be affiliated with Houthis, but Houthis are actually awesome. I've seen Hasan say that a lot, and I'll show it to you as I move on. Houthis are awesome. I've even heard people, the likes of Norm Finkelstein, saying that they should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, the Houthis. And Hasan very much is a fan of the Houthis, which I'll show. Let's start with the Houthi flag. Here is their official flag of the Houthi terrorist organization. It says, Allah Akbar, death to America, death to Israel, curse the Jews, victory to Islam. This is their flag. This is their pirate flag. What do you call it? There's a name for that. It's like a catchy name for it. I think someone said. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's their pirate flag. Death.
Now, once again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Now, the reason why Hasan and Norman Finkelstein are saying they deserve a Nobel Peace Prize is because the Houthis are the only ones, in their view, who are actually trying to do something about what's going on in Gaza. I don't necessarily agree with that, but nonetheless, that's why they say that. But as for the flag, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. These people are born into the worst situations you possibly could be born into. These people are being murdered. These people are being starved. They're losing homes. They're losing their country, their loved ones. They live in constant fear, and they're born into that. And you expect them to not have hate. Here you are, Ethan, who is pointing at anti-Semitism, as you should, and pointing out the hate that people have in their hearts. And yet, here are a bunch of people who were born into war that they did not choose, who were born into death and destruction that they did not want. And yet, we expect them to be as civilized as somebody living in a country whose worst tragedy, and it is a tragedy, was 9/11. And as horrible as 9/11 was, and it's horrible, New York City is still standing. 3,000 people died on that horrific day. Hundreds of thousands of people have died in Yemen. Tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza. In the last couple weeks alone, thousands of people have died in Lebanon. Whole city blocks of Beirut have been leveled. Gaza is just rubble for the most part now. Being born into that, and then expecting those people to have the exact same Western values, social values. Oh, well, listen, sure. Yeah, you were born into war, destruction, and death. But at least have the same social values as us, or not, or we're going to view you as a lesser person. Now, this doesn't excuse anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is wrong no matter where it happens. But I think sometimes we miss the forest for the trees. Sometimes the hatred someone has for a person or a group of people is not based on some sort of unreasonable or some sort of just crazy conspiracy. Sometimes it's based on their lived experience. And when I say lived experience, I don't mean, oh my God, one time I was mugged by a black person. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, oh my God, I live in a country that's being bombed by these people. I have had my family members killed. I never had a peaceful night of sleep. The reason why everyone in our country is so skinny is because they don't have food. Because of the enemy. That type of hatred, that level of hatred, if you can't empathize with it, then you're not the right person to have a conversation. You're just not. Because yes, anti-Semitism is horrible. But if you want to know why these people hate Jewish people or hate Israel or hate America, listen to them. Ask them why. It's not because they believe that the Jews run the media or any of that. And it's not an excuse. There's a reason why they do. You shouldn't accept the reason. There's no reason to hate anybody. But if you're empathizing with people, if you want to humanize people, listen to them. And then maybe you can understand where they're coming from. There's no excuse for hatred. But human beings are human beings. And there's always a reason for hatred. Some of that reason is bullshit, like I said. If you get mugged by a black guy on the street and all of a sudden you're, full on a white supremacist, yeah, you're a fucking idiot. But if you live in a country that's being attacked by one group of people, or a country that represents another group of people, or a country that you feel like is oppressing you, and that's populated with a certain group of people, those are the people that you will hate. That's an unfortunate reality, but that is the reality. To look at those people and be like, oh, well, you're evil because you're anti-Semitic, as opposed to looking at them and pitying them. Gosh, you're anti-Semitic because of the evils that have happened to you. You need to see the brighter and better world. We need to stop this evil that's happening to you so you can actually live a better life and get rid of the hate in your heart. That's the important thing. That's what someone like Ethan Klein, for some reason, just doesn't understand. And it's tragic.
Now again, a Jolly Roger, thank you guys. Now again, death to Israel, curse the Jews. Not a great distinction between Zionism and Jews. And this is basically their flag. So.
And just a quick point on this. Israel, especially the Israeli government, consistently talks about how Israel is the only safe place for Jews. It consistently says that. It is the motto of Zionism. Israel is the only safe place for Jews. So if you are going to hate Israel for the atrocities it does to you, by definition, you're going to hate the people in Israel. And as Israel proudly gloats, it is a Jewish state. So it follows that they would also hate Jewish people. It's not about like if a Christian country bombed the shit out of a Buddhist country, and that Buddhist country is getting fucking destroyed, and the Buddhist country goes, you know what, fuck, and the Christian country, I guess, would be Canada. Fuck Canada and fuck the Christians. Or you know what, fuck Canada and fuck white people, if most people in Canada are white. Then obviously, no one's going to sit there and be like, oh, well, you're racist towards white people. No, they don't like Canada. Most people in Canada are white, therefore it follows that they also hate white people. Once again, hatred is not excused, it's not bad. I mean, it is bad, excuse me. But we should try to understand people. Understand where their hatred is coming from. And a lot of the times, and as uncomfortable it is to say, hatred comes from a place that you can empathize with. You don't have to agree with it, but you can empathize with it. Well, at least in some cases. I guess Ethan doesn't.
I mean, this is equal to people who are trying to tell me, like, Hamas revised their charter in 2016, so therefore they no longer want to kill Jews. It's like, give me a fucking break. You would never run this kind of defense for the obvious dog whistling that you see by terrorist organizations. If it was about any other minority group. You know, they changed their, actually, they didn't change it. They added a new chapter. They didn't even change the original charter. It still stands as it is, unedited. But they added like a new chapter that's like, actually, we don't hate Jews. We just hate Israel. In 2016, when they realized how important the information warfare was happening online, on TikTok, on Twitter. And of course, they were right. We can all see that they've been very successful in that, in spreading that. It's gone all the way up to Hasan, which is now accepted form of discourse. That's.
But once again, it goes back to the logic, right? Yeah, they're going to hate the Jews because the country that's oppressing them is proudly saying we are doing this to protect Jews. Like, the logic stands. You don't have to agree with it, but that's the logic. The country is oppressing us because they want to protect the Jews, so therefore we hate the country and we hate the Jews. That's, once again, you don't have to accept it. You don't even have to like it, but you should accept the logic. Israel is a country for Jewish people. That's not me saying that that's the Zionist movement, that's the Israeli government. It is a country to protect the Jews, it's a safe haven for the Jews, and everything they're doing is to make sure that the Jews are safe from any type of oppression or genocide. That's their argument, that's their statement. So if you are killing a whole bunch of other people, or in the case of Gaza, not just killing but occupying them for decades and fucking generations, in the name of protecting Jews, they're obviously going to hate Jews. It's not complicated. But once again, the crime of the Gazan people apparently is because, or Hamas I should say, is that, oh, they're anti-Semitic. Well, yeah, why are they anti-Semitic? Do you think they just have some sort of blood-borne illness that makes them anti-Semitic? Or do you think their social-political environment makes them anti-Semitic? We don't have to agree with why Islamophobia... We don't have to agree with Islamophobia, right? But we can all see the pattern. We can all see that 9/11 led to a rise in Islamophobia. We can all connect the dots on why that's the case. We can all connect the dots on why COVID led to an increase in Asian hate. We can all connect that dot. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to think that it's a good reason, but you can connect that dot. The way Ethan uses the word anti-Semitic, and the way that a lot of people in the West use the word anti-Semitism, is that they think that the people of Gaza, or Hamas, I should say, or Hezbollah, or the Houthis, or whomever, are the same as some fucking asshole in southern Alabama who walks around going, Jews will not fucking replace us. These two hatreds are not the fucking same. They're not. Sure, they hate the same group of people. Granted, yes. Right? Obviously, the KKK members do not like Jews, and Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthi, whomever, are saying death to the Jews or death to Israel, whatever the fuck. But their hatred doesn't come from the same place. When Ethan talks about anti-Semitism, when a lot of people in the West, a lot of liberals talk about anti-Semitism, they treat it all as if it's the same. It's not. They come from two very different places. The people in Hamas don't hate the Jews because they think the Jews secretly run the media and they have this, and they kill Jesus and they have this secret conspiracy to rule the world and fucking kill all Gentiles and all this shit. That's not why people in Hamas hate them. People in Hamas hate the Jews because the Jews live in Israel. And for not centuries, but generations, Israel has said, and its allies have said, we need to keep Israel safe for the Jews. And therefore, us oppressing Hamas, or us occupying Gaza and oppressing the Gazans, and expanding into the West Bank, and attacking Lebanon, we need to do those things to protect the Jews. And that creates a hatred. Hold on a second. You're attacking us to protect those people? Well, fuck you and those people. That's the hatred of a lot of Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis and so on and so forth. But the hatred of someone who's part of the KKK is a bit more conspiratorial. It's, oh, well, the Jews actually control us. Oh, the Jews killed Jesus. Oh, the Jews are drinking the blood of children or some fucking bullshit. Hatred is still hatred. It's not good. But if you truly want to understand the people you're talking about, know why they hate. If you think that all hatred is the same, that anti-Semitism is the same regardless of who spews it, then you just don't understand anti-Semitism.
Hamas somehow doesn't hate Jews because Anyway, besides the point, this is the Houthi flag. Thank you. Up next. Recently, the Houthis were in the news for sentencing 13 to public execution on homosexuality charges. There's a common theme here. In Houthi-controlled Yemen, here they are doing a Heil Hitler. Is there any other explanation for this other than just doing Heil Hitler? Taking an oath of allegiance to the Houthis. I mean, it certainly looks like a Heil Hitler, but okay. Maybe they're just maybe it's just a coincidence that the guy in their flag right here that says curse upon the Jews is doing a Heil Hitler. But at any rate, they're executing gay people publicly. That's not cool. They are.
This is also an extremely stupid point. They're executing gay people publicly. Yeah, you should not execute gay people publicly. You shouldn't execute gay people at all. Obviously. But what is this point that you're making? That the Houthis aren't as liberal as we are? They don't share the same social values that we do? Yeah, sure. But what is this point? So therefore they're bad, horrible, disgusting people? And therefore fuck them? If that's the point you're making, then it's weird to moralize when you're sitting in the West. Oh, we don't like the Houthis because they don't like gay people. Fuck, we didn't like gay people until about 10 years ago. 15 years ago, not 10. Was it 10? Yeah, 10, 12 years ago. Fuck, we still don't like trans people that much. Oh, but because they don't approve of gay marriage, therefore. And because they kill people for gay marriage, therefore. They're evil and we can't accept them. They're living in a war-torn country. But yet, you have to be as socially positive as the rest of us, or fuck you. Yeah, sure, you're getting bombed, you have no food, your children are dying, you're getting fucking genocided, but hey, listen, guys, listen. You better be fucking liberal and woke when it comes to your social issues, or fuck you. Seems to be an extremely stupid position to take.
Taking boats indiscriminately. Another talk about you hear about these terrorists is that they're only targeting Israeli-controlled ships affiliated with Israel. In fact, Houthis are taking boats indiscriminately. They are terrorizing the entire sea there. And once again, a huge number of these ships have nothing to do with Israel. Here's an excerpt from this BBC article. The Houthis initially said they were attacking ships connected with Israel or headed to or from there. However, many of the vessels have no connection with Israel. Major shipping companies have stopped using the Red Sea, through which almost 50% of global seaborne trade usually passes, and are using a much longer route around southern Africa instead. So, once again, people run defense for the Houthis, Hasan included, saying, as I'll show you later, that they only target Israel ships. It's not true. Not only that, they board these ships, they take hostages, and then, guess what? They disappear. We don't even know where the fuck they are. They kidnap people. None of them Israeli, by the way. And apparently they hang out and have parties with this cute youth Houthi kid. But other than that, we don't know where they are. We don't know what they want. We don't know if they're alive. And it's just a fun game we like to play with the good guys over at the Houthis. Here's a CNN article about them imprisoning shipping crew hostages indefinitely. Let's take a look here, just for your enjoyment. Hope is fading for imminent return of the international crew of the cargo ship hijacked by Houthis in November. The senior Filipino diplomat saying he's not expected to release date until the war in Gaza is over. Houthi-owned helicopter hijacked the...
Yeah, and this is horrible. The Houthis should not be taking innocent people hostage. It's fucked up. But let's understand what the Houthis are trying to do. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with what the Houthis are doing. But listen to what they're trying to do. They're trying to disrupt the world trade system so they would pay attention to what the fuck is going on in Gaza and actually put a stop to it. That's their goal. I don't like the way they're going about their goal. I think it's fucked up. But that's their goal. It's not that hard to understand. They don't have to just take Israeli ships or just take American ships. By disrupting world trade, they know that they are forcing other people's hands to get involved. That's their goal. It's not that complicated. I don't agree with how they're doing it, mind you. Shouldn't be taken hostage. It's kind of fucked up, but that's their goal.
The Galaxy cargo ship, November 19, in the Red Sea.
I'm going to fast forward to some of this stuff because it's the same thing over and over again. Houthis are bad because they're taking ships. I agree.
Mexicans and 1 Romanian. 22 hostages, 0 Israelis, 0 Americans. I mean, even the only European one is Ukrainian.
Okay, yep, let's fast forward. Same thing.
Ton of hostages. None of them treated well. They're being sold on with the great guys over at the crew is extraordinarily multinational. I mean, we should be, what a, in Yemen. There's a terrible famine happening in Yemen. Terrible humanitarian crisis. Fairly kidnapped, excuse me. What a global workforce they have there. Oh, excuse me. Here it gets better. The Houthis have been arbitrarily kidnapping aid workers helping in the famine in Yemen. There's a terrible famine happening in Yemen. Terrible humanitarian crisis. But the Houthis have decided to start arbitrarily kidnapping people who are there to help the humanitarian crisis. They're charity workers. And once again, just like the hostages, they're kind of just disappeared. They don't know where they are, what's happened to them, if they're dead, if they're alive, if they're safe. They just kind of took them, and that's that. This is a press release from the United Nations. Just to read a quote here. The targeting of humanitarians in Yemen, including arbitrary detention, intimidation, mistreatment, and false allegations, must stop, and all those detained must be released immediately, they stressed. Yeah, so they're not...
Yeah, Houthis are horrible. They're terrorists. Yeah, we know that. We know they're a bunch of terrorists, like you say. We know that they're horrible, like you say. Yeah, there's civil war going on there. Genocide going on there. Shit like this happens. It's fucking horrible. It's fucking pathetic. It's why when Israel kills aid workers, everyone gets up in arms. Because you shouldn't be fucking harming aid workers. Right? You're absolutely right. It's terrorism. It's horrible. It's fucked up. No one's disagreeing with this. I don't think Hasan has said, oh yeah, you know what, the Houthis actually kidnapping aid workers is a good thing. I don't think he's ever said it. As far as I know, he's never said it. I don't think anyone has said that about the Houthis. That, oh yeah, you know what, them fucking kidnapping aid workers is actually very good. No one's made that argument. Sure, what they're saying is, yeah, the Houthis are a terrorist organization. Yes, sure, fair enough. But to understand them, you have to understand why they are what they are. They're not just a bunch of people that just woke up and said, oh fuck, we're going to be evil today. No. There's a whole backstory. There's some empathy that you should rely on it. You don't have to excuse this bad shit. You don't. But at the very least, have a human perspective on why the shit in Yemen is fucked up the way it is. And why these people act the way they do. If you don't, if you just think that they're just evil, then you're not the right person to have the conversation. But that being said, yeah, fuck. If you kidnap aid workers, you're a piece of shit.
It really is. These are not good people. In fact, they're quite evil, it seems. So, with all that being said, I feel like I've established that the Houthis are a terrible group of people. I'm sure there's a million other things I could say about them. But Hasan interviews this kid who is almost certainly affiliated with Houthis, and asks him a few hard-hitting questions. Let's take a look at some of them.
Okay, this is a stupid question. Okay, you can preface it with that. Does he know what One Piece is?
اول شيء بقول لك انه ممكن هذا السؤال يكون شوي اهبل بس بسالك بتعرف شو هو ون بيس عمرك سمعت بون بيس
اكيد يعني منذ الطفوله وانا اشاهد ون بيس لوفي.
Luffy?
Yeah, he said he's been watching it since he was a kid.
No way!
Yeah.
That's sick. Yes. That's fire. That's so fire. Oh my God. We think the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is doing what Luffy would do. You should tell him that.
بقول لك حسن انه اللي
So this is a meme. He's saying the Houthi pirates are like Luffy. Luffy, of course, is this irreverent, fun-loving, happy, lovable character who just wants to experience freedom on the high seas. And it appeals to youth, appeals to young people. And Hasan is working overtime to convince people that this child, who is a terrorist, not child, he's like 20. This kid who's a terrorist is just like Luffy.
He's a child. He's not a child, but he's a kid. Okay. Once again, people have mixed feelings about that Hasan interview. I can see it from both perspectives. There is something to be said about humanizing somebody. Once again, it goes back to everything I've said prior to this. You don't have to agree with it, but I think there is something to be said about humanizing people. These people aren't some fucking demons or vampires that grew out of the ground. They're human beings. They like the same things you like. They bleed the same thing, same way you do. They sleep, they eat, they wake up, they love, they hate. They're all human beings. And I think that interview showed that. You know, when we talk about Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas, we think of these fucking savages, the Western media. They're human beings. They're human beings. And the quicker you recognize that, the easier it would be for us to resolve whatever differences we have. Okay? Now, as for Luffy doing the same thing as the Houthi kid is doing, I mean, they're both pirates, and whatever the fuck. Right, pirates are terrorists as well, for what it's fucking worth. So, if anything, One Piece is the one spreading propaganda by saying being a pirate is a good thing. But nonetheless, the point is taken.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I've only seen halfway through One Piece, so I don't know. But I don't remember Luffy flying this Jolly Roger. Death to America, death to Israel, curse to the Jews. That was not on his Jolly Roger. But once again, there's time for it to change. Apparently, there's a big tone change in the second half. You know what I'm more interested in than sewing out that he's seen an episode of One Piece? The fact that he admitted to spending time with fucking Chinese vessel hostages that were kidnapped by the Houthis. You know, that would warrant a good follow-up question. But it's unabashed pro-terrorist propaganda that he's chosen, and that is what we're witnessing. This whole interview is frankly disgusting, in my opinion. It's shameful. Twitch should be ashamed. I don't know how he continues to show terrorist propaganda. It is quite alarming, and I genuinely don't understand it. And that's not even the worst of it. We'll continue. This is from yesterday. Okay? He compared this kid to Anne Frank. Let's take a look. Is this from yesterday? Yeah, it's from yesterday's conversation with Asmongold.
A
Who I
teenager.
denounced, by the way, in the strongest terms. The man says insanely terrible things. Accusing Arabs and Muslims of coming from an inferior culture is absolutely pathetic, and something that I deeply disagree and oppose. Okay.
Yeah, he does deeply disagree and oppose with it. He just doesn't want to go into nuance about it. And this is something that you see in the West often as well. A lot of our disagreements with overall bigotry and hatred is based on what we feel is the right thing to believe. We shouldn't hate Arabs. We shouldn't hate Muslims. We shouldn't hate black people. We shouldn't hate blah, 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 blah. And we shouldn't. But the question is, what does that mean to you? When you say that Arabs, when Asmongold said that Arabs are inferior, right? Or the Palestinians are inferior, they have a worse culture and religion or whatever the fuck than we do. We all understood what that meant. We can all understand why that's wrong. Right? Like, come on, you can't say that. Not every Arab is bad. Not every Muslim is bad. These Palestinians are born in horrendous conditions. Why the fuck? That's not nice. Why would you do that? But remember, one of the reasons why Asmongold said that they were inferior to us was because they didn't believe in gay marriage, or LGBTQ rights, or women's rights. Remember what Ethan said a couple of minutes ago about how the Houthis were executing gay people? That was a reason that Asmongold used to say why the Palestinians were shit. And why Arabs were shit. So, like, Ethan doesn't hate Arabs. He doesn't. But he also doesn't know what that disavowing means. He doesn't hate Arabs because he doesn't think hate is a good thing. And you shouldn't hate other people. You shouldn't think other people are less than you. He doesn't believe those concepts are good things, therefore he doesn't hate people. But he has no problem in saying that the Houthis are bad because, well, they don't believe in gay marriage. Which is the same thing that Asmongold said, with respect, I believe, to Arabs and Palestinians. So where's the disconnect here? Why is there picking and choosing? What does it mean truly to say that I don't believe anyone's below me, I don't believe anyone's opinion is below mine, I believe we're all the same humanly? What does that actually mean? That's a question a lot of people in the West do not know the answer to because we're taught from a young age not to hate people. But we don't understand what that actually means. Because in the West, for the most part, the vast majority of the people don't understand what hate is. We, for some reason, well, that's not true. A lot of us do understand on an intellectual level what hate is, but we don't feel what hate is. We don't. But we know that it's bad. Hatred is sometimes to your bones. Something that you don't understand sometimes. We know it's bad because we're told it's bad, but we don't feel why it's bad. We don't feel what hatred is sometimes in the West. And therefore, you could have someone like Ethan say, oh yeah, Asmongold, fucking asshole for saying that about Arabs. Oh, by the way, fuck the Houthis because they don't like gay marriage. It's like, what are we doing? You're using the same argument that Homeboy's using, but you're saying Homeboy is wrong for using that argument. It's fucking silly. It's circular. It's fucked up. It's weird. A lot of the times when we say we don't hate these people, we disavow hatred, we don't mean that. We disavow the idea of hatred because we're taught from a young age to not like hatred. But we don't know what hatred is. We have an idea what we think hatred is. We look at anti-Semitism, that's hatred, yeah. But what is that? We look at racism, we say that's hatred, yeah, but what is it? What is it? What is that hatred? Where does it come from? What is the root of that? We don't understand hatred to a large degree. Nowadays, we don't. So therefore, we can say shit like, oh, we disavow hatred, without actually knowing what that means.
That being said, in this conversation, this is what Hasan told him about the cute Houthi pirate.
From Yemen, okay, who everyone called, myself included, called Tim Houthi Charlemagne, or Chalamet.
Is that the One Piece one?
Yeah, exactly. Now this kid is like, I think he was like 19 at the time when I talked to him, which means that for most of his life, he has withstood, right?
Sure.
But he is a person whose only experience is like, it's literally like talking to fucking Anne Frank, basically, okay? Being able to talk to Anne Frank in real time.
Once again, I find this comparison.
Now, before Ethan tells us what he thinks, what is Hasan saying here? Now, for those of you who don't know who Anne Frank is, she was a victim of the genocide who wrote her experiences in the concentration camps, in the death camps. And after, obviously, the Second World War, her journal, her experience was published, and she became one of the faces of the victims of genocide. A young Jewish lady. Now, what is Hasan saying here? In my opinion, it's very simple. He's saying, much like Anne Frank, this young man was born into a world, as far as he's concerned, like the Houthi part is concerned, a world that is filled with genocide, filled with war, death, and just fucking fucked up shit. That's the world that this kid has known his whole life. Just the same way the world that Anne Frank had known for the vast majority of her life, or a good portion of her life, is the concentration camp. That's the similarities he's making. He's not saying that they're the same. What he's saying is that these people have experienced life differently than what any of us could imagine. Have experienced life only through tragedy, only through war crimes, only through genocide, only through violence, only through death, only through bloodshed. That is what they have done. That is what he is saying. That's what he's saying. Now let's see what Ethan thinks he's saying.
Comparison insidious for a few reasons. First of all, I don't remember this page from Anne Frank's journal, but again, it's been a long time since I read it. I don't recall this this picture of saying, we will spike all Nazis through all Germans through the asshole and mouth and wish them a gruesome death. Wasn't in there, actually. Also,
I mean, a lot of Holocaust survivors did have an overwhelming hatred for Nazis and Germans. As they should. Why wouldn't they? But sure. And once again, he's not making a literal comparison between the two. Once again.
I find that conjuring of a Jewish victim of Nazi Holocaust is a intentional play to further blur the lines of anti-Semitism and to try to take away from, try to exploit the suffering that happened on the Holocaust, once again, not related to Israel at all, to somehow this Houthi kid. He's cheapening what happened to Anne Frank, frankly. This kid, I'm sure.
So once again, by Hasan saying that, hey, listen, this kid is like Anne Frank, right? Like he's like Anne Frank in the sense that he's grew up in a world of genocide, in a world of horrible shit that's been happening. He's cheapening the Holocaust, and he's cheapening Anne Frank and her experiences. And he also says, by the way, that the Holocaust has nothing to do with Israel. We know that's not true. We know that. I mean, that's not even, what the fuck? We know that's not true. That the Holocaust is a major reason why so many people look at Israel as the fucking protection for the Jewish population. It's the fucking reason why when Hamas attacked on October 7th, a lot of the Israeli spokespeople were like, oh my god, this is the worst atrocity that happened to us since the Holocaust. That this was another Holocaust. There's a reason why they kept referring to that. Because the argument, no one believes the argument that the Holocaust had nothing to do with Israel. Of course they did. Of course it does. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. Like, if there's any reason for why Israel should exist, it's the Holocaust. Nothing wrong with admitting that. It's weird for him to pretend like that's not the case. So that's fucked up on its own. But for him to say, well, he's downplaying Anne Frank and her experience because of him comparing it to this Houthi kid, it's like, he's not. He's saying that they both grew up in genocide. And their worldview is so different than ours. That's all he's saying. It's not downplaying the Holocaust. It just isn't.
Sure grew up in terrible conditions. There's no doubt Yemen is in a terrible state. However, we don't, as society, as a species, while we can appreciate.
Oh, and secondly, the reason why he's comparing the Holocaust, he said that, well, Hasan's making the conscious effort to compare the Holocaust to this Yemeni Houthi kid as a way to downplay the Holocaust, or as an anti-Semitic dog whistle. The reason why he's making that comparison is actually in the clip itself. Hasan said that this kid was born and raised in genocide, and therefore he's like an Anne Frank, who was obviously victimized in the Holocaust, killed in the Holocaust, which is a genocide. That's the comparison, that they're both born and raised in genocide. Or Anne Frank wasn't born in genocide, but they're both in genocide. That's the comparison. He's not doing it to dog whistle to people that, hey, this isn't anti-Semitic. He's doing it because the Yemeni genocide and the Holocaust is obviously a genocide. The connecting fucking bridge is the genocide. That's why he's doing it. It's pretty fucking obvious.
Where people came from and why they turned out the way, it will never excuse violent, hateful behavior, right? We all understand that. We all know that. Anne Frank was an innocent girl who was, whole family, including her, except her dad, was murdered by the Nazis. And once again, as I say this, I know people are thinking, oh, well, what's Israel's doing to Gaza right now? Once again, I remind you, people who are trying to convince me and others that Zionism has nothing to do with Israel or nothing to do with Judaism, I'll remind you to take a step back and wonder, why is it you're thinking that? Because the Nazi Holocaust has nothing to do with Israel.
The Nazi Holocaust has so much to do with Israel. Forget about the war that's going on now. It has so much to do with fucking Israel. Are we going to pretend like that's just an issue that no one of the Jewish community gives a fuck about? Are we just going to pretend that? Like, oh, fuck, you know what, the Holocaust happened, but that has nothing to do with why we want Israel? What the fuck are you talking about, man? And secondly, the reason why they're bringing up the Israeli genocide or the Israeli war in Gaza is because you're talking about the fucking Houthis. And the only reason you're talking about the fucking Houthis is because of the conflict in fucking Israel. Jesus Christ, it's not that hard. He's trying, he's reaching for straws to try to make it seem like, oh, well, the people that are just randomly bringing up Israel, when I talk about anti-Semitism, are just doing it because they fucking hate Zionists and Zionists to them are just Jews. When he's consistently proven time and time again that he either doesn't know anything about Israel when he says, oh, fuck, the Holocaust has nothing to do with Israel, when it has a lot to fucking do with Israel. It is the reason why Israel exists the way it fucking exists today. When October 7th happened, I'll say it again. What did people consistently say? This is the worst thing to happen to the Jews since the Holocaust. Hamas is akin to the Nazis. This was what they were kept bringing up, kept saying, that they had Holocaust intentions. Speaking of Hamas. So when you say that it has nothing to do with Israel, you're fucking insane, man. You're just fucking insane. And let me just say it again. If there's any legitimate reason why the state of Israel should exist, it's the fucking Holocaust. When an ethnic group goes through that, yeah, maybe we should create a state that protects them from any type of future annihilation. I agree with that notion. We should create that state. But to pretend like, oh, the Holocaust has nothing to do with Israel, and therefore, anytime you guys bring up the Holocaust, what the fuck? Fuck you, you're being anti-Semitic. What the fuck?
Has to do with Judaism. So why am I being told not to care about this? Because of what's happening in Gaza. Make it make sense. Please.
Once again, no one told you not to care about it. Anyways.
I don't get it. Yeah, I find this honestly disgusting. It's vile. And frankly, he should be ashamed. He should be. And frankly, again, Twitch continues to allow him to spread terrorist propaganda with impunity without even seemingly a warning. Here he is showing 2 weeks ago, this is again, once again, recent, shows Houthi terrorist propaganda video, the kind of stuff that kind of reminds me of like Al-Qaeda and ISIS propaganda videos that they would put out. That's just like, well, I'll show it. Here's Hasan. And once again, if he's commenting on it, if he's critiquing it, that's one thing. But he presents it, and he walks out of the room. He presents it with zero critical analysis, just a full-on endorsement of this terrorist organization right here on Twitch. Now, I don't know if you remember, but basically this is what caused the apocalypse on YouTube, is that ads were showing up next to ISIS videos. And here is Hasan, their darling creator, who has tons of ads running on his channel, showing to his audience, who is willing to receive everything he's saying without much critical thought. No.
But remember, he doesn't think Hasan is anti-Semitic. Remember that.
Offense, but at least to the ones that were in the subreddit calling me a liar, that Houthis are awesome.
Yeah, like we took that fucking
2 weeks ago.
You did? Oh yeah, me and XQC both.
Hasan here shows a Houthi music video of the Houthis just being fucking reckless, disgusting, anti-Semitic music video to his friend as a joke, it seems. So I'm gonna most likely fast forward through this. We'll catch the first couple seconds. Once again, I thought this was a bad look by Hasan. He shouldn't have done it. It looked really stupid. So I do agree with Ethan on this with respect to it being stupid. I don't think it's an indication that Hasan is anti-Semitic, but nonetheless.
Oh, no, damn,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, we did. I'm sorry. I need the money.
Oh, you want to see a Houthi musical?
Sure.
These were the people that the Saudis were killing, by the way.
Zach,
Just so you know, these fucking.
Sorry, the sound pack is falling off here. So put on, here, let's continue. Let me read the words for you to enjoy. And once again, I feel that we should throw up. We disavow this video, Nate, because I think these. So he introduces it as a fun Houthi musical.
Musically gifted individuals.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I need the money.
We do not care. We do not care. Make it a major world war. Great. Good messaging. Shooting, their heart longs for master rifles and assault rifles. Very good. Very cool.
Mind you, he's talking about a rebel group that's fighting against, that's in the midst of a fucking civil war. Like, I don't want to make this comparison because I don't think it's a fair comparison to either side, quite frankly. But like the Ukrainian president has literally gone to like every country that would listen to him begging for weapons. But we don't view that the same as this, for whatever reason. And I'm not saying it is the same as this, mind you. It's not. This is actually fucking weird as fuck when you sing songs about it. But nonetheless, they're fighting a civil war. Obviously, this is the type of shit that they say. President Zelensky's not sitting there saying, hey, listen, we don't want weapons. Fuck weapons. We're all for peace. No, they're saying, no, give us fucking weapons. Give us weapons. We need weapons. We love weapons. Give us weapons. We need to fucking fight this war. Fuck Russia. That's what they're saying. That's what people in war do. That's not, like, this seems like such a simple thing to comprehend and understand. Now, for the rest of this segment, he just plays the video. Hasan talks about how the Houthis, and Ethan talks about how Hasan's friend here reacts in a funny way to these videos because he was taken off guard by it. And Hasan then comes back and talks about how these Houthis actually do like disrespectful marches on the Israeli flag and the American flag and stuff like that, which once again we've already spoken about this type of stuff. So I'm just gonna fast forward through this.
And this man, him, there was a war. This poor fucking guy is like, what the hell? Apparently they want to kill him. What's his name? Emperor Bedman, like George, this guy in the trenches, master rifles, shooting. Their heart longs for master rifles and assault rifles. Very good, very cool. He gets up and leaves his poor friend there in the trenches, taking Houthi terrorism propaganda to the dome. And I've seen this clip, man. This poor guy has no idea what's going on. He's obviously not very savvy with politics. And this man just left him fucking like George Bush when he heard 9/11 happen. You know what I mean? By God, I forbid myself this life. Ask your excellence. They're showing what's his name? MB, the king, the new guy of Saudi Arabia, the crown prince. Apparently they want to kill him. There was a war there, and they want to kill him, so that's why they're showing him. MBS? Yeah. Yeah, he's just talking about their military campaigns, and this poor guy, I wish I had this at a higher quality. Yeah. By the way, notice the age of these kids dancing with guns and rifles. And how old would you say these kids are here? To me, they look 15.
Now, to be fair, we don't know how old these kids are, but let's play the video a little bit more and we'll go with his logic.
Just saying. The Houthis have child soldiers. They recruit them. They encourage them as part of their army. And he, terrible his lifespan, well, he's not even a child soldier at this point. He's like 20.
Okay, so the Houthis are evil because they have child soldiers. I don't agree with child soldiers. I think child soldiers are horrible. But I'll ask the question, what's the difference between an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old when it comes to the army? I'm not saying that America has child soldiers or anyone has child soldiers. What I'm saying is, we have very young soldiers as well. Now, there is a difference between an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old. I concede that. But remember, just because you can oppose something or you disagree with something doesn't mean you should stop thinking about it right after your disagreement. I hate child soldiers. I think having child soldiers is horrible. The fact that Houthis have them, it's fucking disgusting. However, it's easy to make these comments when you live in a country that has, number one, a voluntary military, a volunteer military, and when all of your wars happen abroad, when all of your cities are still standing. The moral argument that children should not be fighting in wars is correct. The practical condemnation of it is also correct. But let's be a bit more nuanced. It's very easy for a bunch of people, including myself, to sit in a very comfortable home, oceans away from any war, to say, hey, listen, you guys are immoral because you have children fighting in your fucking army. Fuck you. I've never lived in a situation where my neighborhood was nothing but fucking dust because of bombs. Or I've never had a friend die because they were bombed. Or kidnapped. Or just killed as fucking a part of a larger genocide. I've never had that. I've never lived in a country where every man, every child needs to grow up so fucking quick or else they will die. I live in a country that says you can't have a driver's license until you're 16 years old. I live in a country that says, hey, listen, if someone hits you, call the police. I don't live in a country that doesn't have rules. That the rule of law has completely broken down because of a fucking civil war. I don't live in a country where I literally have to wake up every time I hear a bomb explosion. I never in my life have ever been scared of being blown up by a fucking bomb. Never. In my life. You can't say the same about large parts of the world. Child soldiers are horrible. They're horrible. You should not have child soldiers. But before we pass judgment, there's a difference between condemning something, being morally against something, and judging something. Let's not pass judgment when we live in just different worlds. At one point, this country drafted people. America, I'm talking about. At one point, they did that. When war is at your... Now, mind you, they did that during Vietnam and Korea and all those other wars. Those wars weren't even at your doorstep. But when war is literally at your doorstep, yeah, man, shit like this happens. It's an unsavory part of life. It's an unsavory part of the world. It fucking sucks. But that's life. And the fact that it's hard for people to comprehend that is a good thing, because that means life is good. But it also means sometimes maybe you're not the person to have the conversation.
Hasan comes back from the bathroom. We've now digested a minute and 10 seconds of unmitigated, pointed out.
What do you mean a music video? Very music. I'm seeing this. They're
Brought her directly into the main line of Twitch.
And they love walking over. They love walking over like the American flag and his
Military, Saudi military style. Again, they're just
I'm surprised they haven't done it yet.
whites of this. Houthis. Who
Resistance, you know what I mean?
He's in OTK. And
I was wondering who he is. He's on, by the way, or like judgy. He was just like, what the fuck is happening?
You know what?
Yeah. I think it's officially sanctioned by the CEO. Wish him happy. Thought surely this is too far. Like something's.
This is just Ethan talking about how Hasan should be punished for showing this type of quote-unquote propaganda on his stream. And it's not that relevant to the larger point. That's why we're just going to fast forward through it.
Gotta give. Like, hey, silence his platform. They're Houthi guys. App. All right here. Here, let me just down. It's presenting. Blake.
Overtake. They fucking look at this.
This video is Hasan just kind of like saying, hey, look how cool the Houthis are because they're taking ships hostage. And Ethan obviously has a problem with that, as do I. Right? That's what this video is about, and he condemns Hasan for doing quote-unquote Houthi propaganda. I wouldn't go that far. I just think Hasan is okay with the Houthis at least doing something in his mind to try to stop the genocide in Gaza. So we're going to fast forward through this. But nonetheless, this is Hasan saying, hey, look, the Houthis are so cool because they're fucking taking over a cargo ship. And this is Ethan saying Hasan's a fucking asshole for doing that, and he's spreading Houthi propaganda. That's it.
They got the corporation that if you were on
Actually, line of the ships that they've attacked defected by Israeli ships. They're in your cause. Want to be there. It's helping anybody.
take action. So you do that like on this helicopter.
Like a drone.
They're coming in hot with
apps for sure.
And product.
That
My tree.
again, Israel are citizens who were born there. They don't have anywhere to go. This is part of the fucking problem, Israel. Like, again,
Can't get my Amazon Prime deliveries. What the fuck is going on? I hate this. Israel sucks. I'm leaving Israel. That's the goal.
again, I just have to comment, just kind of almost as an aside, but getting people to leave Israel, like 80% of the people in Israel are citizens who were born there. They don't have anywhere to go. This is part of the fucking problem with this conversation that I have to explain to people. The Israelis cannot go back to Europe. There's literally nowhere else in the world for them to go. As I said, Elo's parents were born in Israel. So it's like, the country's been there almost, coming up 100 years. Like 80% of the people were born there. Okay, who's leaving? And I guarantee you the people in Israel would love to leave if they could. I'll tell you, I've known a lot of Israelis who are able to immigrate to America, and that's like the dream there. Trust me, you think they fucking want to be there? Most of those motherfuckers can't wait to get out of there if there's any chance.
And that's actually a point that Hasan has actually brought up as well. If you look at their initial discussion about the October 7th attacks, Hasan has said that the reason why he supports a one-state solution is because he knows that it would be morally wrong to ask any of the Jewish people to leave, to ask anyone in Israel to leave. He has made that very argument, ironically enough.
That's the truth. Do we have the full? I'm going through the ship with their guns drawn. Hey, you down here. Show. This is the rest of the video. Oh yeah, heroes and totally. And by the way, everyone you saw in that video, by the way, who was being kidnapped, missing, unaccounted for. Where are they? That's part of the fun of being kidnapped by Houthis. Nobody knows. Where are the aid workers working in Yemen who are arbitrarily detained? Nobody knows. These are not good people. These are terrible people. These are religious zealots. These are violent, terrible people that are making the material conditions in Yemen, as far as I can tell, even worse, in an already terrible situation. And Hasan is here running cover for them, whitewashing them, making them palatable to a general audience in the West, and all of this.
So this just tells you that he doesn't know about what's going on in Yemen. It wasn't like, I mean, the way he said it, he made it seem like, well, the Yemen was such a bad country, all of a sudden the Houthis came in and made it worse. No. It's a much more complicated socio-economic, fucking political situation. Once again, you don't like the Houthis. You don't have to like the Houthis. You do not. They are a rebel group. They have done terrorist acts. They have hurt innocent people. But once again, if you're going to have this conversation, you should at least know what the fucking conflict is. And Ethan's about to show you how much he doesn't know about this conflict.
Once again, reminding you of their flag. It says, "Death to Israel, curse upon the Jews." All of this contributes to a rising sense of anti-Semitism, of unsafeness that Jews feel around the world. And this, once again, blurring the line of the phrase Zionist with Jew. So there is that. Let's see what else we got here. Catch back up to my spot. Deleted this part. And then, of course, our lovely terrorist, cute terrorist here, was quick to embrace the meme. Now, I watched that interview with him. Even Hasan said in the fucking interview that he was surprised by how media trained he was. So why is everyone going to be like, oh, he said he's not a Houthi. He said he doesn't hate Jews. This man said in his interview he's surprised by how media trained he is. They know what they're doing. Propaganda is a big part of their arsenal. They're very good at it.
Yeah, because Ethan knows so much about how the inner workings of the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah are, and the propaganda is the inner workings of their arsenal, or a big part of their arsenal. I mean, like, when did he become such an expert in that? Yeah, he said, Hasan did say that the kid seems very media trained. Yeah, that doesn't mean what he's saying is not true. Doesn't mean that he's saying it's a lie. No, it doesn't also mean that what he's saying is true. But nonetheless, when did Ethan become an expert on what the inner workings of the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah are?
But for some reason, when it comes, he won't answer any of my questions, but I guess I believe him.
This next part is just the kid posting memes about Hasan being a character from One Piece. So I'm going to fast forward through it. You get the gist.
Give me a fucking break. It's an operation of Israeli ships. Although he's loving, ready for it. Maybe there is more resemblance. But yeah, platforms posting death threats against. He was posting death threats. So I think we can all agree that's probably a good thing there. And Hasan clearly believes that as early as yesterday. He compared, once again, a reminder, he compared this kid to Anne Frank. Yes, Anne Frank, who, once again, important to say, has nothing to do with Israel. Think about how you do that in your brain. And
I don't think anyone said Anne Frank had anything to do with Israel. When the fuck did Hasan say that Anne Frank had anything to do with Israel? What the fuck? But this Houthi kid has something to do with Israel. And the war, that's why they're bringing up Israel. What the fuck?
And you'll realize the problem. Anne Frank was in an attic with her family hiding from Nazis. Her entire family, including her, were killed, except her dad. She wrote about like peace and philosophy and all. She was a lovely young girl that wrote about lovely, beautiful thoughts in her diary. You know, she persevered through all of it with like a very positive, hopeful outlook. And that's part of what is so striking about her diary that makes it such a time-held read. You know what I mean? This kid is a terrorist and he's posting death threats on Twitter. You know, it's, you know, and again, I know it's like, it's Saudi Arabia that's doing the genocide on Yemen, right? That's the war. Israel's never invaded Yemen. So it's like, it's almost like he's being like, oh, he's getting genocided. I don't know. It's all kind of a little nebulous. All the Gulf states were attacking Yemen, yeah, with U.S. support. Okay. Of course we had something to do with that.
He didn't even know that basic fact about it. And once again, the comparison to Anne Frank, he's not saying they're both the exact same. He's saying that these are two people that are going through horrendous experiences, and you're kind of getting a look into what their lives are. Yeah, we would all prefer people to be peaceful and lovely, of course, but that's not everybody, right? And you can't hate people for having hatred in their hearts when they go through horrible situations. I'm sure that if Anne Frank's journals or Anne Frank's diary had hateful thoughts about the Nazis or Germans in those diaries, that he wouldn't sit there and say, well, Anne Frank is wrong for doing those things. Of course he wouldn't say that. No one would say that. What makes Anne Frank's diary so remarkable is because it's an insight that most of us just can't comprehend. And also because of just how gentle the person was, how Anne Frank was, and how remarkable that seemed to us. Which is a good thing, in the sense that, even in the worst of times, here's a beautiful, good soul who's so good and remarkable. And that's why, the Holocaust was such an evil thing. How many innocent people, how many good people it killed. No one is denying that. But at the same time, if Anne Frank's diary had a couple of pages which is like, fuck the Nazis, they're pieces of shit, fuck German people, no one's going to sit here and be like, well, Anne Frank, what a fucking jerk. She should not be celebrated. She's obviously hateful. No one would say that. And for good reason. And no one should. Now, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be calling this Houthi kid a terrorist. What I'm saying is have nuance.
But regardless, I don't know. Now, if you want to compare a kid, whatever, okay, I'm not going to split hairs here. So once again, yeah, when you say Zionist, I would love to know, what is it you mean? Do you mean it like the Houthis?
Mind you, up until now, Hasan has not said the word Zionist in this video. So, there's that.
Mean it? Or do you mean it like a liberal Israeli talking about Western settler expansionism? This is a conversation that needs to happen. That's not happening. In fact, when a Jewish person like myself says that this is a conversation that needs to happen, I'm overwhelmed with comments telling me that because of what's happening in Gaza, we just don't have the bandwidth to care about that right now. Or, so what? All good? And I mean, listen, I don't even need a list. You guys have seen it, okay? You've seen it. You know what happens.
No, but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it. And you don't show the nuance that you expect of others. You don't show that same nuance. Right? You keep asking the question, what do you mean by Zionist? You tell me. What do you think the Houthi pirates mean by Zionists? Or what Hezbollah means by Zionist? Do you actually believe that their definition of Zionist is the same thing as some fucking asshole from Missouri's definition of fucking Zionist? You tell me. You're the smart one. You tell us.
So let's see. There's a few more. There's one, I think. Oh, this is a bonus meme. Unrelated, but I think it's important. Actually, no, it's related.
There's some file issue that he has opening this file, so I'm going to fast forward that.
Fuck it. I'll say it. Stand by. I just know the fuck. Cusack. This is beautiful original art.
It's a
with the shit on.
Oh man.
Again, this is part of why I just need to talk about it. Doc 13. Okay, thank you. Doc 13. There's one more post here before we move on. When I started posting about this stuff, I always deal with this. So again, this is part of why I just need to talk about it. I know you guys don't like when I talk about Islam. Well, I appreciate there's a lot of crossover, and I'm grateful to those of you who are able to watch us both. It's impossible for me to ignore that the majority of these people coming from are people coming from his community. Something his and his audience refused to reckon with. Hassan's whitewashing of that Houthi kid, says he wants to spiral Zionists to death, was frankly disgusting. I don't give a fuck that he's seen an episode of One Piece. I'd like to know why he's hanging out with boat captain Chinese cargo vessels, aka hostage. As more info has come out about this kid being a terrorist affiliated and being anti-Semitic, lots more. There's a lot more examples. Obviously, I didn't pull all of them, but I think I pulled enough.
And mind you, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on a million social media. Apparently the kid released a couple of tweets saying that he actually doesn't hate the Jews. And he's actually made it very clear that he does not hate Jews. He does not hate Muslims. He doesn't hate anyone. He just hates the Zionism. He's actually made it clear on Twitter, apparently, after this video was released, apparently. So you guys can find that on your own. I don't have those tweets. I'm not on Twitter. I don't care to be on Twitter. I don't give a fuck in that sense. But the kid apparently has done that.
Hasan has refused to disavow him. In fact, the opposite. He continues to prop him up as a trustworthy, reliable, good guy to look up to and to consume media and messaging from. The reason I brought this up is because this was the guy who told me to kill myself on Twitter, and I suspected he must be.
He's going to go into just some guy on Hasan's Discord who told Ethan to kill himself, which once again is not good. You shouldn't be telling people to kill yourself. You're a fucking asshole. But I'm going to fast forward through this part because we know what he's going to say.
Hasan could, again, some reason, bad stuff. Anti-Zionism, weird, obsessive fucking harassment is pretty much 80% Hasan fans. That's just the empirical fact of the matter.
He says that without showing any empirical proof, mind you.
But I know that, yeah, Hasan does rebuke the people who say mean things about me in chat. So obviously, not a personal attack, but certainly there's something in the water. Okay.
So he spent this whole hour or so far talking about how Hasan is growing anti-Semitism. He's spreading terrorist propaganda. He is creating a community that hates Jews. But then he says, well, obviously Hasan has rebuked some of these people as well, so not a personal attack on him, but there's something in the world. Like, what the fuck, dude? Seriously?
You know what I mean?
Like, for someone who's literally told us, you need to get the hints, you need to read between the lines here with respect to the anti-Semitism, the Zionism, and everything, he really is really incapable of nuance when it comes to what he just said.
All right, so moving on to the final part, which is short, is Hasan denying rapes on October 7th. The popular talking point, something that I've seen, supported by pretty much the most random, bigots on Twitter to like the most mainstream commentary people. Everybody is somehow caught on or agreed. Once again, just like the Houthi spike tweet when everyone rushed in to tell me I'm fake and I'm like a piece of shit and I hate Arabs, are the same people denying the October 7th rapes. And the reason I say that, before I even watch these clips, is like, okay, the UN is often cited source by pro-Palestinian activists.
Before we go into the UN, let's clarify what Hasan and a lot of people that don't believe rapes, I say in quotations, happened on October 7th. It's not that they don't believe rapes happened on October 7th. It's that they don't believe the rapes the way the Israeli government and the way the Western media has presented has happened on October 7th. If most people remember, a New York Times article came out after October 7th talking about how there was systemic rape. That when Hamas came over the wall, came over the border, came over the fences, that they murdered and systemically R-worded women and I think in some cases children. That was the accusation that was put into place. That it wasn't just murder, it was systemic rape. That's, or systemic R-word, excuse me. That was the accusation. That accusation has since kind of been rebuked, right? I think there's been journalism done by The Intercept and by other journalists who have shown that actually the evidence that the New York Times used to say there was systemic R-word that happened on that day isn't actually on good ground. In fact, everybody that has talked about this issue, as far as I know, who quote-unquote, as Ethan says, denies what happened, everybody that denies that there was R-wording, what they say is, and Hasan also says this, most likely that it did happen. However, it wasn't systemic. Now, why is that? Is that a distinction without a difference? No. It is a distinction with a lot of difference. There's a difference between saying that Hamas or any of the people that came over the fence that day made a conscious effort to go into Israel, kill and rape people, than it is to say that they made a conscious effort, than it is to say that it wasn't a conscious effort. That was never part of the plan, but some people did commit rape. Now, you can say that there's a distinction without a difference. I don't think it is. There's a difference between something being systemic and something being part of the plan and something not being systemic and something not being part of the plan. It also means that the amount of rapes that were initially reported, there isn't anything that substantiates that. Now, a lot of that could be due to the fact that there were so many people that were killed. And a lot of the people that were raped were killed, allegedly. All the people that were allegedly raped were killed. And therefore, we don't have any evidence because the bodies were burnt by the government afterwards, or were burnt in the attempt of trying to, kill the terrorists, the Hamas fighters. But whatever the case may be, there just hasn't been substantiated evidence that it was systemic. That's what people are opposing, not that there rapes happened. No one's saying that there's no rapes that happened. They're saying that the rapes, the way that Israel has presented it, there just hasn't been proof. There just hasn't been substantiated. Everyone kind of concedes that it probably did, but no proof has been put out that at least the rest of the world could see. That's the argument that's being made. But once again, let's see what Ethan says.
And all the rebucation of Israel. Well, here is a UN report. Sexual violence and conflict, Office of the Special Representation of the Secretary General. They did a mission report on October 7th, sexual violence. And I'll go down, I'll spare you guys this long document and read the conclusion, which is succinct and to the point. Conclusion. Overall, based on the totality of information gathered from multiple and independent sources at the different locations, there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred at several locations across Gaza periphery.
Mind you, listen to the words. They have reasonable grounds to believe. That doesn't mean they know for sure. And I'll say it again. There's most likely rape did happen. But nothing that has been presented so far has given us a absolute no questions asked, nothing. No questions asked, absolutely 100% that rapes happened. That's what people are objecting to. Yeah, there are reasonable grounds to believe that. Sure. Absolutely, they're reasonable because eyewitness testimony says that. Some people that work in hospitals, some people that work in mortuaries talk about how they viewed or they saw people with, genital mutilation and saw with markings that would indicate or be evidence of rape. Right? Most of it's eyewitnesses, most of it is just third-party sources telling the UN investigators, the same way third-party sources told the new NYT reporters, but nothing that you can point to and say this is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, unquestionable proof. That's the point that everyone's making. If you're going to make the claim that there was massive rape, systemic rape, then you have to prove it, unfortunately. Right? The claim is just not enough. You have to prove that. And that's the point. That's the point of contention here. No one's saying that rape didn't happen. In fact, if you ask Hasan, he'll probably tell you rapes most likely did happen. But there's no substantiated evidence based on that. Even this report, it says right there. Right? We'll hear it again.
There are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred at several locations across Gaza periphery, including the
reasonable grounds, not irrefutable proof. Reasonable grounds. And unfortunately, in a situation like this, reasonable grounds is the most that you can get. Because a lot of it is eyewitness testimony, a lot of it is third-party testimony. Obviously, the UN and Israel kind of have a weird relationship, and Israel doesn't really trust the UN, so they don't really have a lot of access. And a lot of it is, that's not to say that the rapes did not happen, or that there wasn't rapes that happened. But it's not irrefutable proof. And if you're going to make the claim that there was systemic rape and that rape did happen, you have to have that. There's a difference between making the allegation and making the claim. And as you're about to see, Ethan makes the claim, and he has a problem with people that think it's just an allegation that doesn't have substantiated proof.
Form of rape, gang rape, during the 7th of October attacks, credible circumstantial information which may be indicative of some forms of sexual violence, including genital mutilation, sexualized torture, cruel.
Once again, listen to the language. Credible circumstantial evidence that may be evidence of. Once again, that's not to say that sexual violence did not happen. It probably did. But if you're going to say that it did happen, you need to have evidence that's more than just maybe or reasonable ground.
Inhuman and degrading treatment was also gathered. This is the UN. In the beginning, a lot of people weren't comfortable coming forward. As time's gone on, there's more and more firsthand accounts coming forward of women telling their story of watching it happen. And in my opinion, it's impossible to deny it. And the active attempt to is vile. It's frankly vile.
And that's where he's wrong, right? Like, it is frankly vile when someone just tell you rapes, or you shouldn't deny it. But once again, as he said, that these are third-party eyewitnesses. They're not first-party witnesses. In other words, they're not people that actually went through it. And thankfully, they weren't people that went through it, of course. But the issue that people are having, this is not just Hasan, this is also a lot of journalists also have this issue, is that if you're going to make the claim that it happened, you need to have irrefutable proof that's beyond a reasonable doubt. Which even this UN report says. Which even this UN report doesn't say. For obvious reasons. I mean, Ethan's about to go into it, and I largely agree with a lot of the stuff he's about to say. I just don't agree with the idea that Hasan is a rape denier.
And it's just painfully ironic, which this whole thing is, because I feel like the left really cares about racism. You know, they built the whole platform on it over the past decade, 2 decades. But like all of a sudden, you know, they're nowhere to be found. They're accusing women, just because they're Israeli, of lying about being raped. There are women on record in interviews, in these reports, on record saying I was raped. You know, it's a problem too, by the way. Yeah, generally, if you're being raped by a bunch of terrorists during a terrorist attack, you're probably gonna be murdered as well.
By the way, this accusation that he makes of Hasan is very vile, saying that just because the women were Israeli that they're lying. No one's made that accusation. I challenge Ethan or anyone in any community to find where Hasan has said, hey, listen, these people are probably lying of rape because they're Israeli. No one has even suggested that. No one's made that argument. And to even suggest that is fucking vile. But remember, this isn't a personal attack against Hasan. Remember that. And by the way, I agree with what Ethan's about to say next.
As well. Most people raped were probably murdered. But there's still firsthand accounts, and plenty of them. And they're being denied. And it's not so much like the...
Yeah, most people that were raped were probably murdered, and that's one of the reasons why we don't know for sure, right? We can't substantiate it, and that's unfortunate.
The anti-Semitism, because once again, I'm going to do my best to separate it. These are Israelis, okay? But it's the disgusting hypocrisy. It's the cognitive dissonance. It's the like MAGA brain. I mean, this is left-wing MAGA. Following dogma before facts, all the way to the fucking end of the game, okay? And
facts that Ethan has not shown. He literally just made the claim. That the reason why these women aren't being believed is because they're Israeli. What facts did he show for that? None. What facts did he show that Hasan made that claim? None. However, according to Ethan, Hasan and his community are the ones that are being dogmatic. Mind you, this rejection of the rape claim is not unique to Hasan or his community. A large portion of journalists also dislike or disagree with this claim. Just saying.
Hasan, once again, contributing to this atmosphere of disgusting rape denial, which again, something that over the last 10 years, we've agreed is a terrible thing. We've all said, you know, believe victims, support women, but apparently when they're Israeli civilians, they're lying. Here he is, laughing when Kamala mentions October 7 rapes. Let's see.
October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival.
Objectively true.
Women were horribly raped.
Now, when she says women were horribly raped, you'll notice Hasan bows his head with a giggle. He's smart enough not to outright say they're lying, but he's signaling to his audience quite clearly, I'll say, this is not a dog whistle, it's a dog shout, that he doesn't believe them. And it's echoed in the chat. I mean, you can all...
So once again, this is something that you can't blame Ethan for, because he probably doesn't watch Hasan's stream. Hasan's objection with this whole thing is, like I said earlier, it's not that he doesn't believe rapes didn't happen. That talking point of horrendous rapes happening, systemic rapes happening on that day is a talking point that has not been proven. It's a talking point that's been used by mainstream media, but it's a talking point that has not been proven or substantiated by anybody. That's why he's laughing. And you would know this if you watched the earlier streams. But Ethan doesn't watch the earlier streams and just thinks that, oh, well, because Hasan's laughing, it's because he thinks that Israeli women are lying. Once again, he's making accusations that have no evidence for them.
I'll see, and I'll show you guys that the chat turns into a frenzy of calling her a Zionist and a liar.
Mind you, right there, he said that the chat turned into a frenzy of calling Kamala Harris a Zionist and a liar. Keep that thought.
These are leftists. These are people who support women. Blows my fucking mind. There's no consistency. It's a total farce.
Raped.
Oh, mind you, what he just said here, it's not personal against Hasan, mind you, but Hasan is someone that doesn't support women as well. So he's someone who supports terrorism, props up terrorism, grows anti-Semitism in his community, and doesn't support women. But remember, it's not a personal attack against Hasan, though. Okay? Remember that.
As I said then, I say today, Israel had...
What's funny about that, Hasan?
Why don't you ask him? Why don't you ask him?
What do you think his audience is getting from that?
Rightly raped. As I said then, I say.
Like, did she really go there? Yeah, it happened, bro. Sorry. Let's go ahead and read the comments. Maybe I'm misinterpreting.
Remember what he said about the comments. They called her a Zionist. Okay, let's see if the chat calls her a Zionist.
Today, Israel.
Let me zoom in so you can read this.
Has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters.
And once again, I don't even think her statement, like, I think she's doing a pretty good job. She says they have a right to defend themselves, as all countries do. But how they defend themselves matters. That's true, right? And we all agree. I think even a lot of people who are critical of Israel would say they had a right to defend themselves up to a point. But then it became, this horrible humanitarian crisis with mass murder, right? And so at what point, where is that point, right? But once again, and in recent news, the president put out a warning to Israel saying that if they don't fix the humanitarian crisis happening in Gaza, that they're going to pull embargo. They're going to do embargo on arms. So, she's not giving Israel a blank check by any means,
Yeah, of course. The war's been going on for a year. 40,000 people in Gaza that we know of. Probably significantly more people have been killed because most likely they haven't done the counting properly, obviously, just because, the war is active. But 40,000 people that we know of for sure have been killed in Gaza. Many of which, was with American-made weapons. And the war has now grown into Lebanon. Thousands of people have been killed in Beirut and in Lebanon. Hezbollah has now obviously become the enemy of this particular war as well. And now Iran has also joined in. And what has this created? This created a big rift in the left, especially among Arabic and Muslim voters, and young voters who consistently ask Kamala Harris, why the fuck aren't you guys rebuking Israel? Why the fuck do you guys keep sending money, weapons, and now soldiers to Israel? What the fuck? And the Biden campaign and the Kamala Harris campaign realize that this is a big issue, realize that this is something that's actually dividing them and could cost them the election, and have now taken vocal efforts to put an embargo on any weapon sale, as Ethan just said here. But guess what? They're only doing this for the election. They're only doing this so they don't lose Michigan, or they don't lose any swing states, or they don't lose any Arabic votes, or don't lose any young votes. This war's been going on for a year, and for the whole year, Israel has been getting a blank fucking check. That's a fact. That's a fact. A fact. So yeah, cool that in the last couple of weeks of an election that they actually might lose, they say, hey, we'll actually put checks on Israel. They haven't done it. Words are meaningless without action. Ethan knows that. So, funny.
And so then they're going to turn on her and call her a Zionist because she said there's rapes on October
Once again, they're going to call her a Zionist. Let's look at the chat.
7th, which is just factual.
Far too many innocent Palestinians.
Kamal, you dipshit, stop lying. I hate that they always say that. Is there a better way to fucking... Gross. Boo. Oh my God, with these fucking lies. We are so cooked. Again with this shit. Goddamn, stop repeating this fucking lie. We're still perpetuating this shit. Fuck you, Kamaga. Ironically, this is MAGA behavior right here, calling these women liars in the face of irrefutable evidence, in my opinion. Overwhelming evidence.
Irrefutable, overwhelming evidence that he didn't present. He just showed a UN report that said there's reasonable grounds to believe it happened. Maybe his definition of irrefutable is something else, but nonetheless, MAGA behavior. But mind you, of all the words that he read, Zionist did not show up in the chat, ironically enough.
Say, God, this chat scroll is so weird. It goes so fast, but then when I click, it doesn't move. Come on now. Jesus, where's the chat? I mean, you guys get the picture. It's easy to go. You can review his chat logs. They're not pretty, and they never are. They're horrible, frankly.
Oh, yeah. But where did they call her a Zionist? You made the claim, you didn't show the proof for it again. So, It's a good pattern that he's developing here, I guess.
Fuck off. No proof. Me when I lie. Once again, these are probably, we support women. We believe women, people. Literally empty vessels of a human being. Justifying genocide. She literally didn't, by the way. She literally said the opposite, that, like, to a point. And then she's criticizes Israel. Making this shit up again. Kamala, stop. This is a lie. It's pretty much every other comment. Fucking lies, you bitch. Black card revoked. I guess Hasan's audience has that authority. I didn't know that. Weasley, little liar, dude. Hasan meme. So my point is that, like, he's signaling to the audience, and they're very much picking up what he's putting out.
Well, the point is that you said that they called her a Zionist, and they didn't. Maybe they did later on, but well, you've showed that they didn't. So whatever happened to your earlier point of, you need to show evidence. If this is your example of irrefutable evidence, then maybe the conclusions you've come to are wrong, no?
You know, and once again, without saying anything, look at the discourse happening. Look at the discourse happening. This is not good. This is not good. Holocaust Harris. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Sorry, the scrolling is just so bad, but you guys get the point, I think, by now. So that's just one. There's more. There's another one. Can't help but laugh. Oh, where the fuck's the other one? I feel like it got erased. Him telling, talking to chat. No. Oh, yeah. Didn't we just watch it? I wouldn't do this if I didn't think it was important. Does that look real or am I tripping out? Tripping me out. Okay, so anyway.
Good point.
Good point.
What rapes did Hezbollah do? Bro, what rapes did fucking Hamas do? What are you talking about?
And I mean, there he kind of said it. He said, somebody brought up Hezbollah rapes, which again, I don't know anything about that. I haven't heard that. I don't know if that's a thing, if that's an accusation. I don't think I've even ever heard the Israeli government. But Hasan takes the prerogative to pivot into actually even Hamas didn't rape anybody. And there it is. Rape denial. Calling women who were raped liars.
Yeah, it's a rape denial. There you go. And what evidence did Ethan show that these rapes did happen? Nothing. But once again, Hasan is a rape denier as well. Because he's questioned the official narrative that was put out, a narrative that has not been substantiated. So, that's great. But I guess it's not personal, though. So that's a good thing.
Makes me wonder, what else are they willing to, what other close-held beliefs are they willing to throw in the dump in the pursuit of fulfilling their dogmatic vision of the world? Doesn't seem like a lot. We're coming up on the end here. Yeah, and one more time. Actually, no, we already did that. I'm going to read a few messages I got that I think were very important and good voices. 19 and 20. Let me read these over real fast. These are ones I shared.
Yeah, this is just him reading messages.
Oh, and
I don't think it's that relevant, quite frankly, to the overall discussion, but sure.
Anti-Semitism. Like, imagine who qualifies somebody to make that distinction. And then, so this, without clarifying what that means. I mean, and that's covered. All right, let me read this comment. Made me feel like, thank you to Hasan. So then, and some mega liberal, because 9 of Zion have a friend. So he's like to break a line out.
Full-throated.
I'm getting
that just. I guess.
Saying everyone's left tongue and mouth.
Hell no.
Being a Jew has been harder than I've ever people to go across a lot of times and says.
This is just him reading, like, supportive messages to him on his subreddit. Once again, I don't think it's relevant to the overall point.
Like, well.
The overall point of my video, excuse me.
You know, that happened. I'm always idiot. Just off Twitter, whatever group. At least that's what it feels like. Talk says, "Don't you did it with it?" But this is so good. Conversation with you people. They're Jewish shit that you act don't really conflict. So like what Tel Aviv and not his word hatred. From Wicked of the Americas being both the most spent thing and every desire to. This is something that I really was trying to get across to Hasan when we first started talking about this. Like, I felt like I needed him to come connect with me at least a little bit. And the thing is, like, now he's full blown denying rapes. And, you know, it's like, I don't know.
The irony of that statement shouldn't be lost on people. He wanted Hasan to connect with him a little bit, but throughout this whole thing, he's been as uncharitable as possible. So, take it for what it is.
Here's another one. And this isn't like a Hasan's community thing. I mean, I don't know how else to convince. It is. I might have to leave Hasan sub. I might get hate for this, but I just want to say that I'm leaving Hasan's community. The struggle between him and Ethan has been hard for me, as I understand it's been for a lot of people. And your opinions, the war, and then choose to degrade anyone who doesn't think the same. It's a shame because I've learned so much from.
To be fair, I don't think Hasan actually has an active role in this sub, but yeah, sure.
Watching Hasan, but I can't take the hate anymore. So, should I mention the thing that we talked about before the show? Like the, is that, I feel like I should, but this, unrelated to Hasan. This thing happening right now is dedicated to identifying and harassing non-public Teddy Fresh employees.
Now he's going to talk about the H3 snark thing, which I think is not relevant to the video that I'm making. So I'm going to fast forward through that as well.
It's on the front report. This is not they work for his whole thing. Really didn't give him reason. There is stopped us. We're just on this. Also, fucking. But
PD.
they call accused
Pin. It's on.
So they're shut up. And people. Here's another stuff that they. We grew our whole lives believing like the Nazis were the worst. They're just not that's being deployed against fuck. It's a long pile of stuff that they've just continually fucking do, and it's all fueled by the same. The reason I bring it up now is part of the same fucking flame of crazy Zionist hatred and this catch-all term that's being deployed against pretty much every fucking Jew. And you know.
So for what it's worth, he was talking about how people on the H3 snark Reddit are harassing. I think it's Teddy Fresh is Ethan's or his wife's clothing brand. So that's what they're talking about.
When you convince yourself that you're up against Nazis, you can pretty much justify doing anything to them. We grew our whole lives believing like the Nazis were the worst. They're just plain evil. And you can only imagine, you know, what we would have done to a Nazi. That's just pure. And so we all grew up with that, this perfect idea of evil. And now the left has, you know, perpetuated this idea that Zionism is Nazism. Except, wait, what is Zionism? Okay, well, everyone has a different opinion. It means all these different things. These people, they say, I'm anti-Zionist, and they're giving themselves all the freedom, all the permission they need to do the worst things imaginable to these people. It's fucking insane. It's disgusting.
And he's not necessarily wrong about that. There is a strand of Zionism that is Nazi-like, but not everyone that's a Zionist has that opinion. Is a quote-unquote Nazi or has Nazi-like tendencies or beliefs, and I think that's a distinction that has to be made. Unfortunately, Ethan hasn't made that distinction at all. He hasn't made any attempt to reconcile those distinctions, and he's the worst person when it comes to generalizing people, so kind of the worst advocate at this point, but nonetheless, the point stands.
I hate it. These people are sick. I do, you know, I don't know what to fucking make of all this shit, but I'm sure I missed something because this was whole fucking messy. I want like terrorist. He shouldn't be glorified, okay? And which is like the most I wanted to. There's a lot more I would say about Hasan, but I try my best to keep it only to like the most like straightforward, in my opinion, irrefutable points, which is that this Houthi kid is a fucking terrorist. He shouldn't be glorified, okay? And that the Houthis are terrorists who should not be glorified, okay? And that Hasan, even though I don't believe he's anti-Semitic, is he's causing a lot of pain and trouble in the world for people, Jewish people. I think so. He doesn't realize it.
He's not anti-Semitic, but he's causing a lot of harm to Jewish people. He's a rape denier, a propagandist for the Houthis, and all the Houthis are terrorists, and therefore they are bad. Hezbollah is terrorist, therefore they're bad. Hamas is terrorist, therefore they're bad. And this is the person that's speaking about nuance. Once again, holding these positions is not wrong. But when you do it without any sense of nuance and just a generalized idea of good and bad, an almost Hollywood-like understanding of good and evil, it seems to be a bit ridiculous. But once again, like you said, he doesn't think Hasan's anti-Semitic, just that a lot of Jewish people are getting hurt because of him. So at this point, well, I don't know what the distinction without the difference there is. I guess the distinction could be made. I don't see it, but sure.
He doesn't realize it, but that's what he's doing, and that's why I felt forced and compelled to say that. You ask yourself, what is Zionism? And when you have a definition, you tell me. And then we can decide if I'm one or not, if I should die or if I should live. You guys tell me what's Zionism, and then we can decide if I deserve to be spiked to death up the asshole through the mouth, or if I can if I can actually have access to your encampment on college. Like, and the difference between the two is so insanely stark. It's like most Jews have a nuanced, are going to have a nuanced opinion about the state of Israel. Literally 90% of Jews. I've personally never even met a Jew that was like, yeah, Israel should be abolished and it shouldn't exist. I'm telling you guys, people don't want to listen. 90% of Jews are Zionists. There's a problem with this fucking term.
So when you say, I don't think he realizes what he just did. He's the one that's saying that 90% of the Jews are Zionists. And then he's saying, well, you can't talk about Israel, which is a product of Zionism, when referring to Judaism. Now, 100% of Jews or 100% of the people that follow Judaism are Jews, if 90% of them are Zionists, then how can you then make a claim that they're two different things? Now, that's not the logic I'm using. That's the logic he's using. He's the one that's saying that 90% of Jews are Zionists. And that might be true. I don't know if it is or not. But that might be true. Which then your criticism of, well, why do you guys constantly bring up Zionism when I talk about anti-Semitism? Well, then because you're telling us that they're connected. If 90% of one group of people believe in a belief, right, and you attack that belief by the very virtue of attacking that belief, you're attacking those people as well. That's the argument you're putting forward. You're the one who's making the argument, not anybody else. I don't think Hasan has ever made the argument that the vast majority of Jews are fucking Zionists, fuck them. He's never made that argument. But you've made the argument that 90% of Jews are Zionists, and then you have the gall to ask, well, why do you guys bring up Zionism when we talk about anti-Semitism? Like, fuck, you just said it. Because 90% of Jews are Zionists, apparently, according to you. Like, use fucking simple logic, dude.
I don't know. I don't really want to do this back and forth. I don't know how he's going to react. And frankly, I just want to say my piece. I feel it's a moral imperative for me to do this and to say this. And I understand a lot of people are going to disagree with me for some reason. Some people are going to say that what I did is heinous, that I should be focused on what's happening in Gaza, even though, once again, apparently this has nothing to do with Israel. It's anti-Semitism, but...
Yeah, and apparently 90% of Jews are Zionists. And that has nothing to do with their Judaism? Is that the argument? You just made the argument that 90% of Jews are Zionists. So therefore now, the people who actually criticize Zionism or criticize Judaism or whatever the fuck, they're the anti-Semites. Make this make sense.
My heart is with the people of Gaza. I pray for this war to end. I'm just fucking so need this shit to end. It's gone on so long and it's so terrible. You know, honestly, my hope is that, like, when the war ends, these people will, like, calm down and disappear. But I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I don't know if these people have just got a taste for anti-Semitism and tastes good. You know, there's a reason that shit existed forever. Forever. You name me a time in history when going after the Jews was the right thing. They're Zionists. Okay.
I think you meant to say going after the Jews wasn't the right thing. Like, because he's saying that Jews were prosecuted throughout history. Name me a time where going after the Jews wasn't a right thing. I think that's what he meant to say. Like, he meant to say that Jews were always prosecuted. And that's true. But prosecution has existed throughout every fucking culture, every fucking era, every fucking country, every fucking religion, dude. It is true that the Jewish population have had prosecutions throughout their history. Persecutions, excuse me. That is true with so many other groups as well. So many other groups. Hindu sects in India have been persecuted throughout fucking history. People of lower caste have been persecuted throughout history. People of different religion have been persecuted throughout history. Christians in certain parts of the world have been persecuted throughout history. Muslims. Yes, my friend. Persecution of the Jews has happened throughout history. But persecution of an ethnic group or a religious group is not unique to the Jewish people. It just isn't.
Got it. That's all I have to say, I guess. I don't know. I honestly felt like I had no choice. I had to do it. And I'm sorry. And it is what the fuck it is. That's it. You want to say something, AB?
This goes back to what AB said in the beginning. So let's just listen to what he said. Okay?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, and it's a little tricky for me to navigate. But first and foremost, I don't want to take away from how you're feeling or what you're experiencing, because I know that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and I know that you are definitely a victim of it and a target of it. And I like Hasan as well. And
well, Hasan's telling me it's not real. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. He interrupts. And he says that Hasan said that anti-Semitism is not real. Now listen to AB's response.
You're not interrupting me. Well, on that point, you're talking about the clip with Frogan, whenever he said that anti-Semitism is a form of bigotry that is not accepted, while Islamophobia is a form of bigotry that is accepted. That's exactly what he said. I think what he was trying to say is that because of stuff like the Holocaust and all the persecution that Jews have gone through, you know, it's known that it's not accepted of course, people still do it. It is on the rise. Whereas Islamophobia, it doesn't have like a Holocaust type event, so people aren't as aware. And also, just being closer to 9/11, it's still prevalent.
Based on my
That interpretation of what Hasan said is the correct one to anyone that has any simple fucking grasp of English. That anti-Semitism is bad, but people recognize that it is bad. People think Islamophobia is bad, but they don't recognize what Islamophobia is. That's essentially what Hasan is saying. That's the interpretation. That's what any reasonable person that understands the English language could grasp. But listen to Ethan's response. And listen to the gaslighting, to use his own words here.
I hear you. I appreciate your perspective. Obviously, thank you for sharing. And I understand this is probably uncomfortable for you. And I apologize, dude. It's so unfair that, of all the bullshit that, we all get for this. That being said, obviously, I wish he said a lot more. If that.
I mean, I wish he said a lot more. You literally clipped him, bro. You took a clip. You didn't watch the whole video. You didn't make a summary of that whole video that Hasan was talking in. You took a clip out, misinterpreted it, and then you said, well, I wish he said more. Make it make sense.
That's what he meant, right? Because apparently, I think words matter, especially when you're talking about something as delicate as that, especially when you're talking about your friend who felt victimized by one of your mods, and just blankly defending her. And I mean, it's pretty easy
And he didn't blankly defend her, mind you.
to interpret the way I did.
No, it's not.
And I have to say, like, based on the premise, just based on my experience in the world, is that, like, I think our generation is, like, deeply traumatized by what happened in Iraq. And people are, like, mega support. I think, in general, of our, woke audience, like, people are mega supportive and aware of Islamophobia and anti-Arab hate just because of what happened. And we all are.
Precisely. Our generation, so people around our age, the millennials I think he's talking about, and the woke audience are very aware of Islamophobia. A couple of minutes ago, Ethan just said that we all grew up learning about the Holocaust and thinking Nazis are bad as well. So we're all aware of the Holocaust as well. Here's the issue. The world is not just filled with woke people or filled with people in our era. They're filled with any number of people. That's the issue. If the world was just filled with woke people, guess what? There wouldn't be any fucking anti-Semitism either. Because the world is filled with a lot of fucking unsavory people, my friend.
Generation carries a lot of guilt, right, for what happened.
I don't think this generation carries guilt for what happened in Iraq. They might have criticisms of what happened. They don't feel guilty for what happened in Iraq. But why the fuck would they? I think he probably is trying to say that as Americans, we are a bit more retrospective or a bit more reflective. We have a better grasp of what happened in Iraq, and therefore we're not as hoorah about it. So we're not as patriotic about it. But he's not saying we're not guilt-ridden. That's what the fuck.
And so I see a lot of people who understand that perspective, right? But what I'm seeing more and more of every single fucking day, I've never seen in my life, is just out and open, blatant, unchecked anti-Semitism. Just out in the open, blatant. It's everywhere. You can't miss it. And so, once again, I don't believe that anyone's suffering is greater than another person's. I think everyone's suffering is equally valid. But I do believe that, listen, if you want to be as charitable as you can be, he should have picked his words better. And talking about something as important as that. In terms of what he said, though, I think he's wrong.
So think about what he just said. He said, Hasan, in order for us to be if we want to be charitable, then that's the interpretation that AB comes through. In reality, the interpretation that Ethan came with, is the charitable interpretation. You have to be extremely charitable to think when Hasan said that anti-Semitism is an unacceptable form of bigotry, whereas Islamophobia is an acceptable form of bigotry, that means that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. You have to be extremely charitable to believe that line of thinking. You just have to have a simple grasp of English to understand what Hasan was saying there, to come to the conclusion of what AB came to.
And I think it fucking sucks that's his opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much because I don't want people to take us talking out of context or try to make it something it's not.
Yeah,
but
we're happily,
we're
friendly discussing.
Yeah.
Before and after, we remained friends, and me and AB are great. And we're going to Vegas together.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
Because Lena is back. Do you want to touch on
No, that's it. I mean, Hasan I'm sure he'll, well, I don't know, but
I appreciate gives me the opportunity to respond to it. It's just not what I see and feel. And like to basically say, it's a terrible misspeak if we're going to be generous to him.
Yeah, but to misspeak when he said literally exactly what he said. That anti-Semitism is bad, but people recognize it's bad. Islamophobia, people say it's bad, but no one recognizes it. That's all he said. But the misspeak that apparently Ethan has come to is, what he really meant was, anti-Semitism doesn't exist. Okay.
To say that, whatever. I've talked about it enough. What else is there to say?
So that's the end of that segment. Pretty much the video. There's a funny part here that Ethan speaks about the guy from One Direction dying. Remember, this is a guy that just gave us a lecture on how rape denial is bad, and you shouldn't laugh at stuff like that. But here's a story about a celebrity dying, and let's see how Ethan deals with it.
He fell off a third-story balcony in Buenos Aires.
Which guy was that?
He was the one who I had a write-up for today.
Liam Payne?
Yeah.
Wait, he looks familiar.
He was in One Direction.
Wait, didn't I just see him all like on a balcony, like flirting with fans and
yeah,
stuff?
that was what I was showing you like
that was
last
a weird
week.
clip.
Well, yeah, people were.
Wait, you wrote about
speaking-
him?
That's who we were going to talk about.
He was going to be
today.
our main title.
And he just died?
yeah.
Yeah.
So in
The
a
hell?
way, this hard to have conversation may have gotten in the way of us talking about someone who was falling out of a window or a balcony.
Pain.
Let's give it
Silver
up.
lining.
You know what? What's better than talking about suicide and cookies?
Oh, yeah.
That's the name of my memoir. Any Mudang? You got a Mudang report, Dan?
Treating it with the sensitivity that it deserves. But let's go towards the end of the show. Let's hear him speak more about the guy that just died.
That refers to flatulence.
All right.
Whoa!
With all that being said, members, thank you so much for your continued support. We will see you guys tomorrow. And everybody else, Friday, it's game time. We're here. We're having fun. We're eating cookies. We're talking drama. We got Cookie Crumble drama lined up.
Oh, yeah.
We are not talking about Liam Payne, who died.
Yeah, probably not.
He could have waited.
Yeah, bro.
No?
For the highlight.
Too soon.
Is that button?
No, no.
Just
but to an acknowledgement of, too soon.
Well, it sounds like it was, you put a lot of work into it. That's all.
Oh,
Very sensitive guy. Great. But anyways, that was the video. Hope you guys liked it. It was very long. I suggest people watch Hasan's stream as well to see what his reply is. I suggest... Oh, and by the way, when this video came out, it had a comment section. And now it does not. Comments are turned off. So, there's that. But nonetheless, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys next time on whatever bullshit. And you have a great day. Bye bye.